Want to do the roll call, Lisa?
Person, and maybe that comes from the planning side of things. And so some of the processes that we are doing at the city may change. I'm not saying that they're necessarily going to get better. Hopefully they're not going to get worse, but they'll be different. So I would just ask that you be patient. Some of this is going to take a little bit of time to change. So you'll start seeing some of that coming from Lisa, some of those differences in the way that we're going to do things. The intent is to always be transparent, to give you the best information we can give you so you can make a good and informed decision. I didn't really have anything planned to say, but I'd certainly welcome a visit from you at any time in my office. Give me a call. We can visit at my office, go have coffee. I really look forward to learning more about North St. Paul, the people in the community, and the leaders as you are. So thank you.
Thank you. Anybody have any question they want to ask? Any burning question? I didn't think so, see, because nobody knew you'd be here, so you lucked out this time.
No
Thank you, and
no
welcome.
question, but we're happy to see you here.
Yeah.
And look forward to being able to work with you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks. Oh, and he already explained he probably will need to leave early, and we shouldn't be insulted if he does. So, all righty, on to business. So first item of business is to adopt the agenda. Anybody have any corrections? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adopt it.
I'll move.
Motion by John. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? Right, we've got the agenda. Approval of the January 6th meeting minutes. Any additions or corrections to those?
I have a correction. On page 5 of 73, third line, and Patrick, please verify this with me. I think it lists Commissioner Geltman stated he noticed. I think it was Patrick Lees.
Where are you?
Third paragraph down.
Page 5 of
Page
73.
5.
Yeah, I think that was me.
Yeah, I thought that was interchangeable.
And then by the time we were finished, I didn't have anything further that wasn't already caught, so it's not terribly important.
Yeah.
Just attributing to the right person?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Alrighty, if there's nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Move approval of the minutes.
Moved by Rick,
I'll second.
second by Patrick. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? Got the minutes approved, then we go to meeting open to the public. So if there's anybody here or on Zoom who wishes to bring something forward to the commission that isn't on the agenda, now would be the time to do so.
We do, let
And if they are on Zoom, they'd need to use the raise hand, correct?
John Small has
Okay.
his hand raised, so I'll allow him to talk first.
Okay.
John, could you please turn off your mic and let us know your inquiry?
I've hit everything to allow. Can you hear me?
We can hear you
Yes.
now. Thank you.
Okay. This is an opportunity to try out a new tablet. Plus, I'd just like to bring to the attention of everyone that the meeting open to the public, the description has changed. There's no longer anything about not on the agenda. It just says this courtesy is extended to persons wishing to address the commission who are not on the agenda. So it's not subjects, it's just people.
Thanks. I hadn't noticed that.
And- Yeah, and well, I noticed it coming from being or experiencing the change at the council meetings, which is very dramatic. But anyway, my tablet works. I brought this to your attention, and that's all I want.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. I'm glad it works.
Mhm.
Anyone else? Lisa?
No one else has their, not sure who this owner is. Yes. It just says owner, so I'm going to allow them to talk.
That's Victor Mutiani with Newbridge Capital Solution. We're here for the initial conversation on the variance request for 2170 Aldrich.
Okay, we will do that under the public hearing.
Okay, I'm new to this also, so
Sure.
forgive me.
That's fine. Just hold on a bit. Anyone else?
No one else.
No one else? Okay. Then we'll move on to the public hearing, which is for our preliminary plat and variance requests at 2170 Eldridge Avenue East. So just to quickly go through the process to those who aren't familiar with it, staff will present their report to the commission first, then commissioners will have an opportunity to ask any questions specific to information on the report, just to clarify anything. The applicant will be given an opportunity to present any additional information or comments that they wish to. Then we'll open the meeting for input from the public. We just listen to that, and when that is, everybody has spoken who wishes to, then the commission will discuss the issue and make its recommendation. So, brief explanation. So, Lisa, Brandy, you're giving the staff report?
I am, yep. Could you push it down a page? Thank you. Okay. The city received an application from Mr. Victor Multiani for a preliminary plat and a petition for variances. He intends to split the lot at 2170 Eldridge Avenue, which is a 14,810 square foot property, into two lots. He additionally intends to tear down the existing house down to the foundation and rebuild a new home on the existing footprint. The second lot would be for the eventual new construction of a single-family home.
Brandy, could you bring the microphone a little closer? Thank you. I'm not sure how well it's being.
Do you want me to run this? Okay.
I got it.
Okay. The land division will create two new parcels. Parcel A and Parcel B is shown on the screen. In our review of the proposal against the zoning ordinance, we found that there's 5 areas of deficiency that require the zoning variances, and those are indicated in the red on the table. It's a little challenging to see, so I'll go through them. The minimum lot area in the R1 zoning district is 6,250 square feet. Parcel B will be under that at 5,565 square feet. Minimum lot width is 50 per the required district, and parcel B would be 45 square feet. I'm sorry, linear feet. The front setback, I get into this a little bit later in the report, but the proposed building plan is set back at 19 feet. The existing building, I believe, is at 23 feet. So that does not meet the front setback that is 25 feet required for the zoning district. And then the proposed side yard setbacks for both parcels is 5 feet, which is less than the 6 foot required. So before we get into the zoning variance review, I wanted to provide a little background on the subject property. This site was originally platted in 1887 in the North St. Paul 5th Edition, and at that time the property consisted of lots 8, 9, and 10 in Block 13 of that plat. And the lot area at that time was under 5,000 square feet, and the lot widths were all 40 feet across. So zoning variances may be granted where strict enforcement of the zoning ordinance would cause practical difficulties to a specific property. A variance may be granted if the request is compliant with several criteria, which we'll go through on each of these following slides. So the first criteria for the zoning variance is whether it is consistent with the purpose and intent of the comprehensive plan and the zoning ordinance. The comprehensive plan identifies the property as low-density residential, which is intended for single-family detached uses, duplexes, and townhomes. The proposal is consistent with this land use category. The intended density of the low-density land use is between 3 and 5.5 dwelling units per acre. A density comparison is shown on the slide. The existing density of that northern half of that block is 5.3 dwelling units per acre, and then proposed, if this is approved, would be 5.9 dwelling units per acre. I wanted to point out that the historic density would have been 8.9 units per acre, so considerably higher density. Though the density exceeds that of the low-density residential land use category, the proposal would advance other goals of the comprehensive plan. Specifically, it would create denser housing opportunities, improve the quality and mix of housing options, and revitalize existing housing stock. So we reviewed it against the zoning ordinance as well, and the proposal is consistent with the following purpose statements, which are promote land uses and development patterns that are consistent with the comp plan, protect, stabilize, and enhance the value of land, buildings, and structures throughout the city, encourage reinvestment in the city's established residential neighborhoods, maintain a variety and range of housing options. Therefore, it is staff's finding that the proposed variance is in harmony and consistent with the general purposes and intent of the comp plan and the zoning ordinance. So we find that it meets criteria 1. Criterion 2 is whether the variance will adversely affect the health, safety, or welfare of the city, and staff finds that there would be no such adverse impacts. Criterion 3 is whether the variance is necessary due to special conditions that are particular to the property. It's staff's understanding that the subdivision and variances are requested to establish 2 single-family houses on a lot where there is presently only 1, and historically up to 3 were permitted. These conditions are special but not particularly unique to the subject property. So of the 5 zoning variances requested, staff found only 1 that might meet this criterion, which is the front yard setback, because the existing structure is non-conforming. Criterion number 4 is whether the variance is needed to alleviate a practical difficulty. So aside from the front yard setback of parcel A, which is an existing long-standing non-conforming situation, there is no obvious practical difficulty. Criterion number 5 is whether the request meets the practical difficulties tests. And there are several questions related to that. And our finding is that the applicant proposes to use the property in a manner that is reasonable and generally permitted by zoning. The plight of the landowner is not due to circumstances unique to the property. The proposed variances will not negatively impact the character of the locality. And aside from the front yard setback of parcel A, staff cannot attest that economic considerations alone do not constitute practical difficulties. and the proposed variances will not unduly violate the intent or purpose of the comprehensive plan. So in addition to the zoning variances, this request would also require a subdivision variance. But per the subdivision ordinance, the minimum area of lots shall meet city requirements. There is an option for the city council to waive the minimum lot requirement if unusual hardship is demonstrated, provided that the area requirements are met. And unfortunately, the lot area requirement is not met for the proposal. So some other considerations regarding this particular request. This tract of land to be subdivided is not of unusual shape or size. So it's staff's interpretation that there is no substantial hardship of injustice. The property is in fact already developed in a manner that is reasonable and consistent with the zoning ordinance and the comp plan. However, we suggest that it might be acceptable to use the property as proposed because it's consistent with the historic use of land in the area and with similar lot sizes in the area. Notably, the two adjacent properties immediately east and west of the subject parcel are both existing substandard lots with widths that an area less than what is proposed by the applicant. Additional considerations, the zoning ordinance provides an option for special infill housing if the parcel was within 10% of meeting the conventional minimum lot width and area of the zoning district. In such cases, a conditional use permit is required, and the applicant must supply building plans to ensure that the proposed house is of quality design and materials, and due regard is given to the adjacent properties. Unfortunately, the application as proposed does not meet the requirements for the special infill housing. The threshold for the lot area is 11% for this particular subdivision as laid out. But notably, if the subdivision line was to shift by 1 foot to the west, parcel B would be eligible for this special infill housing provision, and the number of variances requested would be reduced to just 2, which would be the front and side yard setbacks for parcel A. So as I mentioned earlier, there is an existing structure on the site that does not conform to the front yard setback. The existing structure is set back at 21.34 feet. As discussed, the applicant intends to take the house down to the foundation and build a new home on the existing footprint. The draft building plan depicts a modern home with architectural detailing that would further bump the setback forward to 19 feet. While the architectural design could be altered to maintain the existing footprint, the existing foundation is an existing condition of the property. Staff's recommendations are as follows. Approve the front yard setback. Approve the front yard setback zoning variance for parcel A. And if this is what the Plan Commission decides to do, they should determine whether or not it would be for the existing structure or the proposed 19 feet for the modern building that they're proposing. Number 2, deny the side yard setback for parcel A. Number 3, deny the side yard setback for parcel B. 4, deny the minimum lot width zoning variance for parcel B. 5, deny the minimum lot area zoning variance for parcel B. 6, deny the subdivision variance to deviate from the lot width requirements for parcel B. Deny the preliminary plat, and also suggest the applicant withdraw their application and revise their proposal to meet the special infill housing option. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Can I ask a question, Brandy?
Yes.
About, I'm sorry, did I jump in too quickly there?
No.
The front yard setback is stated as being the existing house. I want to phrase this correctly. The new structure would project further into the front yard setback than the existing.
Correct.
It doesn't look that way on the plan drawings.
I agree. It's hard to notice that. Eric pointed this out to me. It is if you look, it's not showing, sorry. If you could go to this slide.
I'm looking at,
At the building plans.
Yeah, the building plan, there was a,
I think the photo you had up near the end.
Yep,
there
This-
was
Not
a,
that one, wasn't there
there's a
another one?
demolition sheet that's, I guess I'm just looking to clarify.
I think it's my understanding that if you look at the image, that the foundation follows from the brick at the bottom upward, and then you could see how there's a projection that's a bit tan, and then the gray projects forward a little bit further than,
Point forward,
correct,
The closest point forward is that dark color.
yeah, the dark brown.
correct.
But if you look at the plan on A1.2, A1-2, there's a projection there now that appears to be the same as the new projection will be.
What page of your agenda are you on?
Oh, 27 of 73?
27. Oh, Bill.
I'm just wondering if I'm misreading it. I mean, it's not dimensioned exactly on both plans. There's a demolition plan next to a new plan.
At this point, I guess I would have to do some investigation to confirm what the dimensions are, but I think at this point, it would be, the discussion should focus primarily on whether the existing versus the proposed would be appropriate.
It's a variance either way.
Correct.
Whether or not the dimension is exactly right, it's a variance from the
Correct.
required setback.
But the resolution
That's-
can be specific in terms of how close it can be.
Understood.
Did you have any other specific clarifications?
Thought I had one.
Or anyone else? I actually had one that's just so I'm sure that we're understanding this. Is this house currently occupied? Currently?
That I do not know, but our applicant is on the phone.
So I just would like clarification. I would just like clarification on whether it is still a non-conforming structure, or if it's been vacated for over a year.
Well, the use and structure nonconformities are two different things.
I'm talking about the structure, the building itself.
But the building is there.
I understand that, but I want to know if it's been occupied.
I answer that question. My name is Victor, I'm the applicant. The
Okay.
current structure is vacant. And
He says it's
actually-
vacant.
Yes, the point of clarification I want to bring is, as much as the new house is totally different from the original structure, we are not demolishing or doing a complete tear down of the existing house. If you look at the plans carefully, the architect demonstrated the walls that are being removed. We are doing an addition of 12 feet on the back. We're just keeping the front setback as the current structure is existing. We are also proposing to remove the top level, because if you go into the house, the way the ceiling structure, this is a very whole house. The ceiling structure is just different. So we propose this look so that we can be able to add another level that goes from the front all the way to the back. And just the garage, we just saying, keeping the existing size of the garage, but just changing the roof structure to match the proposed new design, which is modern contemporary look.
Okay, so
So
is somebody living in the home now?
no.
Okay,
And I believe it's a senior citizen who owned the house. He sold to an investor and we bought the house from an investor.
okay, that's fine. It was just a clarification because if it's occupied, it's still a non-conforming structure. If it's not been occupied, then it's a different type of issue, and that gets into whether you do the 21-foot variance. That's the only reason that I asked that. Okay. Did the applicant want to say anything else before we take public comments?
I was just gonna add that the existing 21 foot that we are asking for variance are exactly the way they is. We are not adding forward, we are not changing the foundation of the house on the front. We're just changing it on the back. making the house a little bit more spacious.
Okay, yes, so you're changing the foundation on the back.
Yes, on the back, we're adding 12 feet lengthwise. The width stays the same.
Okay,
Yes. The foundation basically is just adding on the back. We're keeping the structure from the foundation to the first level, just opening walls, create windows, doors, and adding another level upstairs with the modern contemporary look we have there that you're looking at.
okay, doke, thanks. Anything else? You don't have to. I mean, we know you'll still be there if we have questions.
Just saying, I'm here. If someone wants to ask more questions on what we're trying to do.
Okay.
here,
Thank you. All right, then we'll open the meeting for comments from the public at 6:55. So if anybody would like to provide input on this, now's your opportunity. If you do, please just come up and give your name and address, and try to limit your comments to a couple minutes if possible. Yes, please. And would you verify the little green light is shining so people can hear?
Yes, it is.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Don Schomel. I live at 2169 Belmont Lane East, behind the property. I just had one question I had here. When I looked at the North St. Paul website for zoning, I thought it used to be 65 feet width. It says it's 60 feet, but you got 50 feet here. I was wondering where that came in for this required 50 feet. Did it change, but it's not on your site?
Where did you see that? Just to
I
clarify.
pulled up the North St. Paul website and looked at the zoning, and it said you're supposed to have 60-foot width minimum for a lot.
I didn't even know the website provided that kind of information separately.
Yes, recently, and Elaine can confirm the timeframe on that, but yes, there were two ordinances that were passed. It went to 60, and then the most recent one, which was last fall?
Actually, last summer.
Okay,
we-
last summer it
We
went to
redid a lot of the zoning code to bring it into compliance with the comprehensive plan. And at that time, the setback was reduced from 60 to 50 to allow slightly greater density in certain circumstances.
Yeah.
So I certainly apologize that there's still,
I think it used
fragments
to be
of-
65 even, going by memory, and
actually, it used to be higher than that in some
probably.
cases. Yeah. But that happens over time.
Yeah. And then, the lots on both sides of there are only 40 foot, and they got variances for those because they, individual property owners own those lots, and they were stuck. And they tried to buy, on the one at 2174, tried to buy property from this person that owned that property that you're talking about now, and they weren't willing to sell. And the other lot tried to buy property from the guy on the other side. So I know that for a fact, and these people were stuck. That's why they gave them the variances there. So that's all I wanted to say.
Well, thanks for the history. How long have you lived in the neighborhood?
Well, my wife's been there her whole life. In fact, we owned the house across the street before we built the one on Belmont.
Okay,
And I've been there for 40-some years.
thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, my name is Dawn Jensen, and my husband and I live across the street for a little while more.
Could you give the address, please?
Sure, we live at 2153 Eldridge Avenue. We've lived there for 36 years, and one thing we'd like to have in consideration, I don't know where it falls in planning, but with all the hardscape that you're seeing, we're we're going to go backwards and have flooding issues. We have water that comes across the street from these higher properties. It comes across the street, comes down, pardon me, down the driveway and into our backyard, and it pools in our backyard. So we've had that for probably 36 years. And so if there's a way to make suggestions that they put in, drainage between the properties, and that can go right into I believe it's a sewer system, runoff on a property can go. So we don't know if there's ways to add requirements for their properties, and that's kind of an approval. We don't really disagree with the approval, but just it needs to be have some mitigation for water and runoff, especially if you see all the hardscape. Let's see. I would think that would be our primary thing. Oh, I forgot. Within the last 2 years, further west on Eldridge, there were properties that were built. They took 2 properties and split it into 3 home sites and built home sites. And in doing that, they've damaged the roads in front. They've damaged Eldridge, and they've not really been repaired. So I don't know if that's another piece that could be added, that there's a requirement that if there is, damage to some of the infrastructure, that be repaired also. So those would be my 2 comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
My name is Michelle Ryan, and I'm at 2158 Eldridge Avenue East. Probably my biggest one kind of goes along with the Jensens. I'd probably say in 2014, I had some flooding in my house, and I had done some landscaping and kind of created a swale between my house and the driveway of the house in question. So I'm just kind of curious, in the same regard, is my $50,000 plus of when they come and build and do a new driveway, a new garage, or is that all going to be for naught in the long run? And am I going to have to go back to worrying about every time it rains? Am I going to have water in my basement? And that's probably the big one, and then that's about it, I think.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, thanks.
Anyone else? Was there anyone on Zoom, Lisa?
I do not see any hands raised.
Okay, then one last chance if there's anyone else who wants to speak.
Kathy Schomel, 2169 East Belmont. I guess my question is, and we had heard before we were going to do a flat top, and I have no idea if some other entity addresses that or not. There's nothing else in the neighborhood that's like that, other than if you go down further closer to 7th, the other side of 5th, where all the apartments are flat topped. So I don't know if, there's some kind of building or historical or something that looks at that. Everything else in the neighborhood has a normal, V-shape, whatever it is, roof. And that seems like that would kind of stick out. And the other question or comment I had again was up back on the lot size, and perhaps it was already addressed, like Don, that's my husband, said, I know the 45 or whatever they are, little lots on either side of this property. One was my grandmother's that my dad had built for her, and that he had approached Hulkard's at the time to try and buy some, and they weren't willing. Taverna's, I think, built the one on the other side. I mean, we're talking 40-plus years ago now, and had also approached, and the land was not available, and that's why they got. This piece of land is 120 feet. he could split it in half or develop, whoever does it, into 2 60-foot and meet all the requirements without a problem. So I hate to see a itty-bitty house stuck in there on what is, I'm sorry, it's a wild, but it's a nice big yard. So it's kind of, I hate to see, and up the street, as they said, with water problems, where we had the 3 houses put in where there was one before. The one before, yeah, had been a mess for years, but that also, he got an okay to kind of slide a little extra in here and there. And, you know, I remember at the time, the plan was his parents were going to move into one of those houses, and there was all kinds of familiarity, you know, good for the neighborhood thing. Well, it didn't take long. Parents didn't move in, and they sold their house and moved out to the country. So I kind of hate to see things come in and screw up, a nice, you can't get the land back once you build it all up. It's crowded up. So anyways, that was my thought. You've got enough there to do 2 60-footers if you wanted to.
Okay,
So anyways.
thank you. Anyone else? If not, I'll close it to public input at 7:08, let's say. Okay, commissioners? Who wants to start?
I have one question with this flat roof, like you mentioned, it's something different in the neighborhood, nothing else has it like that. That has a flat roof like the other houses don't have, so it does have a place to, as far as being able to divert runoff more. So is the runoff for this roof gonna go out the back? As far as, because your flat roof, you can slope it. So is it gonna go out the sides? Because you got houses very close as far as that. So is there any, in direction of which way the roof is going to be letting the water?
That I cannot answer. That would be more of an engineering question, but it's something that we
Maybe
can,
I would think the gentleman who was on the call might know that
Oh,
if he's doing the
of course.
design.
Yes, Victor here. Yes, the roof is actually as a slope, both in the garage and the existing house.
Yep,
Slope, you can't see it from the drawing.
Yep.
But it slope towards the back. We'll also have drainage that are built towards inside the walls to make sure the water doesn't flood into the household.
yep. So I can see the garage, the roof is, the house is the same way where it goes towards the back for the drainage then off of the roof, correct?
Yes, just that also on top of the roof, we have, I don't know if anyone can see me, is that we have the wall a little bit higher up, then the roof is below it and it's sloping, so you can't see the roof from the drawing.
Okay. That's what I wanted to ask, because the lady mentioned all the work she did on her basement waterproofing, so, as long as we can direct a flat roof, I want to make sure it's, anything else would be directed towards the back where it could absorb into
Yes.
a yard instead of off to the sides to other people's yards.
Not only that, it is an issue of also the new house has to be able to drain, so it doesn't drain the house itself.
Okay,
The driveway is shown on the drawing, the existing drawing. We're not changing the driveway layout.
okay. All right.
Let me just clarify, Brandy, has this been reviewed from the engineering
no, it has not.
perspective? So we don't really exactly know that level of detail.
Correct.
Okay.
And just to add to that is Ramsey, Washington Metro Watershed District also involved in the permitting process for this particular property?
I think that would be a question that Morgan would be able to answer. I'm sorry, I do not know the answer to that right now.
Yeah,
think
I
it's-
know there are, certain amount of impermeable surface requirements for it to be permitted, but just for everybody's awareness, this is another organization that is involved, and they're specifically dealing with water issues, water runoff and flooding kinds of issues. So that may be an additional resource in terms of being able to find a solution that works well for the neighborhood as a whole.
If it's not specifically required to have that kind of review by the county, we would have our engineer review it
Yes.
at the time of permitting, and
So that's where the city would also be involved.
it could be a condition of approval as well to make sure that it's going to meet certain standards for
Yeah, It
stormwater.
sounds like it's a fairly widespread issue in the neighborhood, and we certainly ought to be highlighting if anything goes through here. This
I
gets
think
approved.
the issue actually right now, aside, because we're getting kind of into the other design issues, but the real issue
agree.
here is the variance and the subdivision request. So
Good point.
I guess I would kind of like to focus on that because, at least based upon the staff information, the applicant doesn't qualify for most of this. And I think the starting point, at least for me, because all of this hinges, I think, on the subdivision request, because otherwise, right now, the property could be redeveloped without subdividing it as a single-family use, because that's what it's supposed to be. And one of the things, the only editorial comment that I'll call it editorial, is that there was mention of the historical platting and the 40-foot and all of that, but that area was really not built. This is, one of the very first houses. It was built 10 years after North St. Paul was founded. But the majority of all around that area, including where I live, was built in the boom times of 1960 to 1970. So that's why those parcels were put together. It was kind of the suburban part of North St. Paul. So it wasn't meant to be high density. At one time, it was medium density, which is why there are apartments and townhomes there. And there was a separate, really, really low density area north. But that changed in the 60s and 70s, and that's where the standards changed. So this particular parcel was built well before zoning code even existed, which is why I asked about the non-conforming piece, because to some degree, if it's been vacant and somebody is going to redevelop, then it wouldn't be unreasonable to say, well, because it was non-conforming for so long, we'll kind of formalize that 21.3 front yard setback and allow that to stand. That would make sense. But for the rest of it, it really does come down to, do we want to subdivide this and create a non-conforming lot? We don't know, I don't know the council has ever done that, to purposely create a non-conforming lot, even if it could sometime in the future be used, under the infill. So that really, I think, is the heart of the issue. There's a reason the subdivision ordinance is written the way it is.
I think that staff recommendation seems to open up some opportunities for a couple of different things. It provides an opportunity to proceed with a project that the owner would prefer to do to a degree. And if they were to modify their proposal, or as you said, withdraw and resubmit in a different manner, and modify the subdivision dimension slightly, you end up with two variances, one being the front yard. I don't know what the other one would end up being. I think a side yard setback for parcel A, right? But it becomes a conditional use permit, correct?
Correct.
And with a conditional use permit, we have an opportunity to put conditions on the approval.
Correct.
In the case of conditions that we could add in that circumstance, we could potentially try to address some of the stormwater runoff issues,
Oh, sure.
which could be done
Yeah.
pretty straightforwardly.
Yeah.
under a conditional use permit. And that would satisfy some of the public comment as well without really putting undue burden on the homeowner.
I think that what is being requested, that's what the staff report is addressing in that, no, we should recommend the council deny this. I would say, personally, I don't think the front yard setback is dependent upon the subdivision or this particular applicant. That just really has to do with how the land has been for a long, long, long time, regardless of who would develop it or whether it's subdivided or not. But that's just my opinion. I wouldn't go so far as to be confident that additional variances wouldn't be needed because we don't know what's proposed specifically for parcel B. So I'm hesitant to make that conclusion.
That was just an example of the scenario if they were to shift.
No,
to just
I
one.
understand. I'm
Okay.
just saying, because we don't have anything that specifically addresses that, we don't know if there would be other requests for variances. But
would be-
those would have to be considered at the time. So, I mean, I think I don't disagree with the staff conclusions. I think I feel a little more strongly. Well, the only rationale that I'm not convinced of is that allowing this would be in harmony with the development in the area for the last 60 years. I mean, the original platting is really not relevant. Everything was platted for 40 feet, including everything around me, and nobody has 40 feet. There are a few, but very, very, very few in this particular part of town. So, does anybody feel that any of these recommendations from staff aren't reasonable?
No. I mean, I'm going to echo, probably a lot of what's already been said, but I think the staff recommendations make a lot of sense. It's good to see people wanting to begin to add a little more density, and I think the particular aesthetics of the project are, not something I think we could really comment on at this point,
Right.
but I think there are ways to make the project work in a way that could be acceptable to the property owner, I think, and I think Patrick's point with, the trying to use a CUP to get the approval makes a lot of sense. I live down the street. I mean, I can attest to the water issues that I'm more up towards 7th, so I'm not right there, but I do walk down Eldridge almost every day with my kids, and I know that there are water issues there, and it's definitely something that should be thought about. I think the staff recommendations make a lot of sense in my opinion. Yeah.
Eric?
I would concur. I think the staff recommendations are good to go. And I like, Commissioner Patrick, your recommendations to maybe look at some conditions on the conditional use permit to make sure whether it's, we look at peak flow rates coming off of the property onto adjacent property owners, just to make sure it fits and it doesn't cause some undue burden on adjacent property owners.
Yeah, one thing interesting about several folks mentioned the 3 homes further. I think it's west on Eldridge, and I recall that change that came, and there was a lot of feedback, public input at that hearing regarding potential water issues. And there was a lot of discussion, and the engineer was involved in that one, but those are really difficult things to deal with, and you never know what impacts are going to occur downstream. So I think the more in an area like that does have hills, it's not a flat area by any stretch of the imagination. You just have to be cautious. particularly when you're talking about increased density, which we did, like I say, that was a big change in the code that we made. There was a lot of discussion about going down to 50 feet. It was not an easy one to make, but it also wasn't meant to just be used for anybody who wanted to have a 50-foot lot or subdivide, something. So it's an interesting one. Okay, it sounds like we have consensus. One other thing I was going to point out, because it just popped into my head, and I'm not recommending it, I'm just making a statement, that one of the other things we talked about that relates to the comp plan and the zoning code update was ADUs. This is the exact kind of property where an ADU, that's an additional dwelling unit, like a mother-in-law home or something like that, or something like that would fit, because
Yeah,
so many of our lots are small, especially now that we're down to 50 feet for a new lot, that it takes a little bit of space for that. It just popped into my head, and I don't even know why. So, but if somebody wants to build one, maybe I'll move in. So at any rate, then I guess, let me just update the recommendation, if you don't mind.
Not at all.
So this is under recommended action. I just want to clarify that this is the Planning Commission recommending the council. Let me start, I'm not going to make the recommendation, but I did want to verify the first one, approve the front yard setback. The request that we have is for a 19-foot setback. That is not something we want to approve, correct? That's what we, right?
Well, that's up to you.
No, well, I think that's what we're discussing here, though, is that the 21.34 makes sense, but there doesn't appear to be a justification to go further than that.
The property owner stated some minutes ago that they did not intend to encroach further on the setback with the
He
design.
said the foundation wouldn't change. You are
That's my-
talking about the design of the building.
Correct.
Yeah,
So, I mean,
and-
there could be some clarification in terms of, perhaps I made a mistake in reading his plans, but it was my understanding that the design was going to encroach past the existing foundation.
And it is on there.
I think it does now, is the point.
I see.
I think the existing does, on that projecting element on the front, I think goes beyond the foundation as a cantilever. From the demolition plan, floor plan.
Okay, so let me just clarify. Are we confident in the 21.34 current?
I wouldn't say that I'm confident without looking at the plans again, but if you're confident that you're willing to keep it at the existing, then that language is what we would use.
Yes, and that's what, then I would recommend changing that
Yeah,
for parcel A.
Yeah,
agreed.
I agree
Okay,
with that, too.
I just want there to be clarity here, because this can get confusing. This is a confusing one, because there's so many, this is dependent on that, and we don't know this other thing over here. So, then the Planning Commission recommendation to the council would be to approve a front yard setback identical to the existing setback variance for parcel A. Deny the side yard setback variance for parcel A. Deny the subdivision variance from the lot width requirements, right? And I guess I'm questioning, we don't have any plans for the setback zoning variance for parcel B, do we? I mean, do we have any plans?
Oh,
If we deny, in other words, if we deny the subdivision variance, do we even have to address parcel B? Because we don't have anything for parcel B.
Correct.
But right,
Yeah,
Well, she
I was just
said correct, we
verifying.
don't have anything, do you, am I correct? that
It's
we don't
based on
need-
the 5 feet is based on the plat diagram that they included that showed the building footprint or the proposed setbacks. But you're right, without a building plan in front of us,
Yeah.
we don't have,
I mean, I don't think we need to do number 3, which is the side yard setback, because we don't have a building plan. And I guess okay, I'm okay with the others. They're probably a bit repetitive, but that's okay. So that would be 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Am I correct?
correct?
Okay. Do you want me to make the motion, or does somebody want to make that motion?
I will make the motion just as you spoke it.
Oh, now that's cheating. We can't just use
Unless
the
you want me to
number.
say the whole thing over again.
Okay, then the plan, I'm going to say it just for spite.
There you go.
So, the Planning Commission recommends that the council approve a front setback zoning variance for parcel A identical to the existing setback. Deny the side yard setback variance for parcel A. Deny the minimum lot width variance for parcel B, proposed parcel B. Deny the minimum lot area, deny the minimum lot area variance for the proposed parcel B. Deny the subdivision variance to deviate from the lot width requirement for parcel B, and deny the preliminary plat. Second by Rick. Any other discussion? Did we miss anything?
Just a clarification for me, are the setbacks to the drip line of the house or to the foundation? Because
Closest wall.
closest wall, because I look at that and I mean, it looks different than the soffit of a typical house, but functionally, is it any different if I had a 4-foot soffit or a 2-foot soffit on my house?
But
Would I be
soffits-
treated,
Soffits don't count.
Yeah, it's the wall,
it's the wall, okay.
for
So
the point of the
what
house.
section of that wall would we count towards the front yard setback though?
Yes.
Yeah, the dark brown part
Okay,
is the furthest front.
okay.
That's okay. Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? That's unanimous. Then we're recommending that the council take that action. And that will be, you mentioned somewhere, that will be at the April, or the March meeting for the council?
Correct, unless the applicant chooses to withdraw and resubmit as
Correct.
a CUP.
So just for members of the audience, that would likely, unless the applicant withdraws, that will be seen by the council at their March 2nd,
March 1st,
1st?
I think so.
1st sounds right, because it's February to March, same day of the week, yep, okay. Thank you. And thank you for coming and providing your input. Okay. I'll let people get their coats and we'll take a breather as we segue into the next item.
Let me email it to you.
And I just kind of gonna, and this might seem picky, but I don't think it is. But the reason I was very specific on the recommendation, that it's the Planning Commission making this recommendation, not staff. When it's
Correct.
going to the council. So when I read the staff recommends this, I thought, wait, that should be the Planning Commission
Well,
recommend.
that's staff's recommendation to the planning commission.
I understand that, but this is addressed to the mayor and council.
Oh,
Somewhere along the line, things got fouled up here, and sometimes it says staff recommends, and it's like, no, it's the Planning
Yeah,
Commission
no,
recommending.
that is a civic clerk technical issue. I'll bring it up to Carrie.
Yeah, I know, I've noticed it, and for most part, it doesn't matter, but when it's going to the council, I can't remember what council meeting I was listening to. It wasn't that long ago.
No, that's within the planning template. The council template would be different.
No. That wasn't what, I understand what you're saying. Civic Plus has got some issues. But what I was saying, I was reminded because I was listening to a council meeting, and at some point, something was being recommended, that they take some action, and one of the council members asked, well, did the planning commission see this? And of course, it had, but it was being presented in a way that wasn't clear. So I just like the documentation to reflect that the planning commission has reviewed it, and this is its recommendation. Well, I think also before this goes to the council meeting for March, I'd like the wording in the report to say that.
Well, the staff report for council would be worded differently because they get a different report than what the planning commission gets.
I haven't noticed that they do.
Oh, well, I haven't submitted very many, but
Yeah.
I've done one.
They've pretty much been the same thing.
Okay. Well, it's been my common practice to change it to the plan commission does X, Y, Z.
It used to be. Like I say, I don't exactly know how it changed, so I don't want to harp on it. It's just something I noticed. And this one in particular, where it's such a complicated one.
Mm-hmm.
Can I do a sidebar?
Sure,
When you ask for if the house is vacant, is there some difference if a house is vacant?
yes. After a year, it's no longer considered non-conforming, which is where the potential variance comes in.
Well, I was curious about that because it's a little different from where I come from. And so I looked it up while we were sitting here. And the statute says, continuation of nonconformities, except as provided in section 234, any nonconformity, including the lawful use or occupation of land use or premises existing at the time of the adoption of an official control under this chapter may be continued, although the use or occupation does not conform to the official control. If the nonconformity or occupancy is discontinued for a period of more than 1 year, or any nonconforming building or structure is destroyed by fire or other peril to the extent of 50% or more of the market value, any subsequent use or occupancy of the land shall become conforming.
I was reading our code.
Oh, sorry. I was reading the
And it's
statutes just now.
slightly different because we can do that. And what it says is for continuation of legal nonconformities, it just talks about any nonconformity may be continued, including nonconforming structures, unless the nonconformity, which would include a structure, is discontinued for a period of more than 1 year. So to me, what that means is, okay, so if it's vacant, and now somebody wants to expand it or, redevelop it, then the way for them to be able to continue that non-conforming setback would be through a variance, and that's reasonable to do. That was my thinking, because you can't expand a non-conformity. You couldn't do it if it was still a non-conformity. So that was just kind of the way I was thinking about that particular front yard variance, that it wasn't dependent to me on this particular application. It would be applicable no matter who, would be using the property. So that's all. Okay. Oops. Turn that over. Oh, appointment of 2022 commissioners. Did you mean election of chair? I'm not sure what appointment of commissioners is. Pardon me?
Nobody's, none of the appointments have expired?
I believe this is from your request at last month's meeting that suggested this is the time that we do
The election.
this year. Yep.
Right. Yeah, because we don't appoint our,
Okay, the expiration and reappointment occurred at the council.
yes,
Last month.
yes. Was anybody's term expiring? Was yours, Rick?
No, mine's up this coming
I guess we didn't have any expiring.
That seems unusual.
It is unusual.
I thought they were all staggered.
Well, they're
I
supposed,
think because people have left during middle of terms, I think everything kind of got topsy-turvy probably.
yeah, I think a lot, that happened a lot.
Term then?
Out of term, yeah.
My
Okay.
apologies, I was just going off of the email for the agenda item.
I thought I said election. That's okay, it doesn't, I just wanted to verify.
No, I'm certainly open, if there's things that I need to change to make it right,
No, it's not a mistake. That's what I took it to be, election, because I knew we had postponed that, because a couple of people were gone last month too. So,
Just
my
a point of order, does it have to be notified?
no,
It doesn't, okay.
this is up to us. We get to do this all on our own, and I understand that John wants to be chair.
What?
That was correct?
No. You can't follow your footsteps.
Somebody's got to.
You rattle off the thing all with your mind. You're gonna be on there going, John, that's wrong, John, that's wrong, John, that's wrong.
I would never do that to you.
Sure, you'd have you tied up in the corner.
So, you're willing to accept the nomination?
No. Are you gonna retire? You're doing a great job. Do you not want to do it?
Well, I think somebody else should step up and do it, don't you?
Well, you've worked with me enough, don't you know that I got a little something loose? When it comes to organization?
Well, here's an idea.
Okay.
How about can we have co-chairs and then alternate meeting chairing?
Look at all these other wonderful young faces here.
Well, a couple of them are relatively new. There might be a bit more for them. And I think I don't know about Patrick, how do you feel about it?
I'm hesitant because
You
afraid I
travel.
can't commit.
Yeah, I know, it is a commitment.
That's what I'm fearful of. Is I don't think I can commit the time
Okay.
that I would really want to put into it. If
Yeah,
I was gonna take
yeah.
on that.
Let me make this offer. If you continue as vice chair, are you willing to alternate meetings and conduct every other
Meeting,
month?
so
Serve as chair every other month.
where do you get your sheet that you read off of there?
I
You make
print
that
it.
yourself?
It's just printing the agenda.
Just the agenda.
Who makes the agenda?
Staff,
Oh, I thought you made the agenda.
no. I send them things and then they say, no, we don't want to do that.
Most of the work is happening right here.
That's your question, and if organization is the issue, we're certainly here to help you and
Careful what you
support.
wish for, because you may pull your hair out.
But no, what I want to also state is that sometimes errors get made.
Yeah.
But I will 100% support you in any way I can.
You don't have to, apologize for some of these glitches that are occurring, because God knows, you don't know how this system works sometimes.
That was my error. I typed appointment instead of election. So
Well, I don't even consider it an error, it was just,
I thought because you pointed it out that it was an.
no, I actually I didn't know if there was something that was going to be reported, like if we had because we're down one, I don't know. So anyway, how's that for an offer?
All right.
So then, what is that? So,
Under pressure, hope I never get captured.
Was that under the condition that Elaine can't point out everything? That was your initial reason for not?
Focusing on me.
okay.
I will do my best. That's all I.
So okay, so is that agreeable to the rest of the commissioners? That I stay on as chair, he stays on as vice chair, but he has the added responsibility of chairing half the meetings.
All right, boss.
Okay, so that's the motion.
Have you ever been chair?
He also has the Silver Lake
It's always
thing.
the big mouth that gets got. I understand.
I approached him, and he became president of the Silver Lake Association. So,
I'll move my house 20 feet forward.
All right, guys.
Silver Lake Association. There you go.
okay, so that's the motion.
Okay.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Patrick. Any discussion?
Sorry.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
I should have said, I should have opposed it. Out of principle.
No, I just won't.
Thank you for caving.
You're
John.
welcome. That's one thing I can do.
Okay, sign ordinance. Sorry, ladies, that took longer than I expected.
No problem. So I have a presentation, but it's mostly just conversation points.
That's okay. It's good
Good.
to put it up in case we have people on Zoom.
Okay. So our update for the project is you now have more or less a complete draft of the ordinance. There's a number of policy items that I think that we should discuss. If we can't get to everything tonight, we can move it forward to the next meeting because I think that there's a lot of content to think about and there's a lot of interplay between the things. So if you mess with one item, it might jigger something in another location. But the topics for discussion tonight, I have sign permits, those signs that require a permit, temporary signs, prohibited signs, regulations for the total area of signage, area limits for permanent signs, area and duration limits for temporary signs, and then PUD provisions for signage. Okay, so the first topic of discussion, and I feel fairly confident about this, is that the signs that we want to require permits for are basically those signs that are going to be permanent structures. And those would fall under two broad categories, building signs and freestanding signs. So building signs have subcategories, and those include awnings, canopies, marquees, projecting, roof, and wall signs. And freestanding signs would include monument, pylon, and I forgot to include it in the ordinance, so this will be a correction, what I'm calling post and arm signs.
Can I ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
Window signs.
Mm-hmm. I put those in temporary.
Even if they're painted on? Okay.
Yep.
I thought so. I'm just trying to remember now.
Mm-hmm. Any comments, or should I keep going?
Why would they be considered temporary?
Well, because when I think of window sign, it's probably a sticker or a painted sign in the window, and it could be there for a very long time. When we get to the point where we discuss the temporary sign requirements, there are different regulations based on the kind of sign, temporary sign. So if duration is a consideration, we could limit how long a window sticker might be allowed to stay, or maybe we're not concerned with it and it can stay indefinitely, or until it becomes, needs to be replaced due to.
So how do we count, think of a good example. Ooh, Newman's neon signs.
Oh,
How do we count those?
neon signs would be, I believe those are also temporary, and I have specific regulations for those as well.
Okay.
Well, yeah, I had and that comes later, but I did have a question of why are we treating neon signs differently than any other illuminated sign? Wouldn't have to be neon, but an illuminated sign that's hung in a window is really what you're.
It's an illuminated sign, so it gets treated like other illuminated
So
signs, I
that-
suppose.
Well, that's for lighting purposes, but for placement purposes, that's considered temporary?
Yes, because those structures, that's not the right word. Those types of signs that we're talking about now, neon, regardless of whether it's actually neon, which is how I've got it categorized.
About where it's placed. Not talking about how I'm talking about if you place a illuminated sign in your window,
Mhm.
like for store, some store that's advertising that way, so to speak. That's not considered a window sign?
Well, it would be, I guess.
So then
I'm pulling it up.
you don't necessarily want all window signs to be temporary, if that's a permanent sign. Kind of like an awning sign.
I would agree with that. I'm not sure
I
it
mean, I
fits.
think of a window sign as a as a sign that little plastic sign or something.
Right.
Put in your window advertising a sale or something.
Okay.
And so that was a question I had later on, so it's good to just get that. And it even had to do with the neon, because I know that that's been used that way particularly for windows, so.
So- Well, I don't know, this is a good point to clarify. So window signs, if it's like a mechanical sign that flashes open or says open, or is a neon sign, we're not considering those temporary.
Well, I don't know how you do.
Window sign actually on the glass?
Yeah.
Well, I would say it's displayed from the window, so it could be any of these categories. I was trying to keep window signs out of those sign types that we would require a permit for.
I think it's difficult because of the downtown as
It
well.
is.
When you get all of those.
Well, and that's why I brought up Newman's, because they have had the neon signs in their window for
Yeah.
decades.
Yeah,
And so how do you treat that? Do you treat that as a permitted sign or not?
Well, and it can, potentially be permanent. That could be the way, especially if you have a lot of glass, exterior, that might be how you want, the kind of sign you want.
right. Regarding Newman's, last time I was here, I suggested that those signs were not allowed per your current ordinance, and I realized after getting into this further that it's actually permitted because it's in the downtown overlay, at least I believe it's intended to be in the downtown overlay. And neon lights,
Neon, it's the only, that was the issue, it was the only kind of illumination.
yep.
But I think this is maybe something we have to think through a little bit more, is the window versus.
Does it make sense to call it non-illuminated temporary window signs? And then illuminated window signs are separate categories.
Maybe.
Or does it become something that is in fact downtown overlay?
That there's specific allowances in that area. And maybe that's the way you treat it, as opposed to, look at, for instance, the strip center over by Target.
I was gonna say.
How would you treat that? Would that be treated differently? Yes, I think it should be treated differently from the downtown, to some degree. So it's just a matter of how that definition gets put in there and how the permitting requirements get put in.
Particularly because the window sign, it says, it talks about being affixed to the interior or exterior, so. Yeah, it's something that we'll just have to keep thinking about as we go through this, and maybe it'll become clearer by the time couple months are over.
Okay, yeah, no, that's okay. So we're gonna put a pin in the window sign question for a moment. Okay. Let's move on to the next slide. So temporary signs. Oh, so this goes right into our discussion. So the ones that I have included definitions for are A-frame, banner, the bench bus shelter sign, flags, neon lights. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm on my PowerPoint. So I'm going out of order from the ordinance, and we can certainly go in order in the ordinance. Okay. So those are the defined temporary signs. In general, temporary signs are not required to get a permit. And then they come in a variety of types. And then those types have specific regulations related to them, such as the location, the number of them, and the duration that they can be placed in the location that they're placed. And if there isn't a specific regulation listed, or if it's not defined as a temporary sign type, then it would default to the general regulations for temporary signs. Any questions or discussions with that? Sure. So the question that we discussed a bit last month regarding the yard sign, I got rid of the yard sign completely because I think it muddied the waters quite a bit. So anything that would be your garage sale, your Black Lives Matter signs, those would be considered they would fall under the general regulations category.
As a temporary
Correct.
sign. So, yeah. Is there a name for that type of sign or not?
Well, that's the trouble. That's the trouble, that they're all just kind of, I don't know that there is a specific. Well, it,
When, you know, I mean, we don't really have boundary or, length of time for a temporary sign, and I don't think we should go there, because if we try to set up a time slot and then create this nightmare of an enforcement rule, it's just ineffective.
Well, what's interesting in the specific, well, you didn't define a general regulation maximum time limit, but for some of the specific ones, a frame is no limit other than you have to bring it in at night. Bus, bench, or shelter, no limit. Feather sign is 90 days. Flag sign is no limit. Neon, no limit. Windows, no limit. Which makes, well, then how is it temporary if there's no limit?
How about informal sign?
this category instead of temporary and formal. I like that name change.
Yeah, because most of them don't have a time limit.
And a lot of what we're looking at is, informal kind of sign.
Yeah, I think a lot of codes do use temporary to differentiate from permanent, so I understand the idea, it's just.
This is going to be cutting edge. We don't have to follow those rules.
I know, we gotta blaze new ground here.
Right. I like this idea that, because really, if there is going to be limitations in terms of how long they're allowed to be put up, then it really does belong with the type of informal sign that we're talking about.
Yeah. Since I'm on page 48 of 73, which is all the various standards for the temporary signs, won't go into any detail, but one that really, the two that struck me, number one was the neon light sign, which.
I pulled that from your existing code.
But the other is political sign. I actually don't think we want to call it political sign. I think potentially, maybe
Call it a campaign
non-commercial.
sign. A
non-commercial
campaign sign is what we're talking about, a campaign
It's
sign.
really election year.
Election
Sign
campaign
is
sign.
what it is.
What if we just eliminated that category? And then,
I think we could, and all we have to reference that somewhere in the statute is item C, the per Minnesota statute. Nothing in here includes this.
okay, I like that. So maybe move item C to general, and then if it applies,
That's right up front.
Right. The election campaign signs are their own thing under Minnesota statute, and that's, political signs should just go away.
They don't call them political signs.
No, they don't.
And they're not. They don't have to be political. They can be anything.
I would make comment, and I know it's just in the middle of the temporary sign discussion.
probably get rid of it from the definition then, too.
Mm-hmm.
Where one of the first things on the temporary sign is, one of the first definitions under location is that it may not be placed in the right of way, which they almost always are.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure that's an enforcement thing that we
Well, I
even
think you put
want
it
to bother
there
with.
to hope people abide by it.
Yeah, it's kind of like, they're almost always in the right of way,
Yeah.
because they're right by the road.
Well. and
So
like I
I'm
said,
just saying, why are we bothering to put that in there?
Well,
Depends on what the sign is, but, I mean, the
I think
duration
more
of
than
it.
anything else, it depends on the size. And especially in election years and stuff like that, you could have some stuff going on you don't want. And you want to be able to deal with it. I mean, you could have the right-of-way littered.
But aren't we going
With
to,
signs.
aren't we going to have regulations for size and number of
Well,
signs?
again, that's what we're going to have in the back of our mind when we
Right.
look at all the regulations.
I was driving recently, and I won't tell you what the sign said, but I saw two signs. It was even in a different state, but I saw two signs that were extreme viewpoints. And I thought, we can't tell them that they can't put those signs up, but we can tell them how big they can be and how
Yes.
many of them they can have.
And where they can put them.
And where they can put them. So I think that's the area that,
Yeah.
when it comes to the whole, is it in the right of way or whatever,
Right.
it will come down to how big are we going to allow and how many are we going to allow?
I just wouldn't get rid of we don't want signs in the right of way. I wouldn't get rid of that. It could be enforced, whether we do or not is
Right.
something else, but it's good to have it in case somebody puts something there
That we want to enforce.
and we want to enforce it. It's egregious enough, little teeny 6-inch thing, nobody's probably gonna care that much about.
So that leads to the question of, you could see that I left it blank, what are the limits and what are the size limitations? I believe in the staff report, I put some guidelines in terms of how big those yard signs come
Yeah,
as standard practice.
the biggest was 32
32 square feet, yeah.
by 4.
Look at
That would be a big sign.
That's I know, it's a big sign, but it's.
Well, but, so that could be maybe your maximum, like you can have one, or you can have several that add up to that.
That add up to that, right.
So you have that on page 48 as a discussion thing?
Uh,
No more than X number of temporary signs may be placed at any one time. And then you had a duration thing and maybe an area. The maximum aggregate area, both kind of discussion topics.
Yep,
Since we got into temporary signs, we may as well discuss that.
I think 32 square feet is a good place to go with the maximum. And then it can be, it can be 12 signs or it can be one sign,
Yeah.
but that's the maximum area.
So if we have the maximum aggregate area of 32 square feet, do we,
It's a sheet of plywood.
so that would be one sign,
right.
It could be.
and that's it. Or it could be multiple, and we're okay with as long as it's out of the right of way. That's where that comes in. Okay, so we don't need to limit the number if we've got.
Oh, true.
Right.
Feet
Yeah, I agree with that.
and duration. Actually,
I agree with,
Your duration could be something along the lines of not temporal, but if it starts to look worn or torn.
and I think that gets into the maintenance piece of it, is these also have to be maintained. We don't want to put a time limit. We don't want to say you can only
Right.
have them for 20 days out of the year. You
I
can't do that.
agree with that. That's what Rick said. It's just an enforcement nightmare that we don't want to get in the middle of.
Well, besides, you can't stop people from
Right.
speaking,
Right,
using
right.
signs.
Yeah, I think maintenance is really what that comes down to.
Yeah, and I think I think all we need is that, what?
It's in there. It's number
Number
5.
Number 4 and number 5. we
Right.
could get rid of 2 and 3, which is the maximum number of signs and the duration.
Yep.
Look how we took care of that little discussion topic in no time.
Yeah, now, we've covered all of about 5 lines of this ordinance. We got a little ways to go.
I think that this is fantastic, the pace that we're moving.
Well, if you're pleased, we're pleased.
Yeah, I actually am. Okay, so do we have any other conversation that you'd like to have about temporary signs specifically?
And we changed the temporary sign name too.
To informal signs.
Informal.
Mhm.
Yeah, informal.
I think that's brilliant. This is going to be great.
I think it is, because that's what they usually are, too.
Yeah, and political signs is going away,
Political signs is going away.
wherever that was. Was that in the definitions?
It was in the list of
The list of types of
temporary
signs.
Nowhere.
It won't.
We're moving the provision,
Yes.
we're going to move that state statute, provision C, up to the general provisions. So if applicable, then Minnesota statutes, blah, 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 will apply.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Will that address local election?
How it's worded, I believe it does. Let me see.
Well, and
I think so.
You can word it so it does.
I think it does.
You did in here. You did on page 48 of 73 where you had political sign.
Yep, that,
Duration.
correct.
You take that exact language and just stick it up at the front. It says the same time limitations shall apply to local elections. So she added that statement to
That is important then.
care for that.
One issue there is still, what if there's not a primary in the local election?
Well, then, if there's no primary, then you don't have to worry about it.
When does it start?
Then it goes by the election date itself, right?
I would imagine so.
I'm not sure the wording says that, but that's the way I'd like to see it.
Okay.
I'm not following. How do you want to see it worded?
So for local elections,
It's either the 46 days before the state primary or the general election, local general election, whichever is the first to occur.
46 days.
46 days before the primary, which is in here, the state elections, and that's cool. What if there's no primary in a local election? Then it's the election that will, it's the date
Then
of
it's
the election.
46
So
days
46
before the
days
election.
before the election.
Well, the way I'm reading is it'd be 10 days. Oh, no, that's after. Yeah.
That's after, yeah. But we've got no.
So if you want it to be 46 days but in any,
Before the local election, 10 days after.
Okay.
Kind of repeat the same thing.
Just more of a clarification.
Because you're right, a lot of local elections don't have primaries. And that means school boards and stuff like that. Okay.
okay, got it. Any other?
Good for you, Lisa, so you'll be all set for the next election?
46 days, huh? Okay.
Anything else on the list on temporary? I mean, you don't have to have it all now, because again, other things will occur as we continue to go through, so.
Okay, yep.
I got you off your presentation there, so we can go back.
Well, that's okay. So the next item is prohibited signs. And basically, I just have a listing of what those prohibited sign types are. You might want to just go to your definitions. But the prohibited signs I have is billboards, inflatable, which is new, based on last month's conversation, off-premises signs, rotating, which I believe is prohibited in your existing code, signs attached to mobile equipment where the sign is the principal use. We discussed that last month. And then signs that are unsafe for traffic. That's the shortened terminology, but the wording in the ordinance is more specific.
That's what we talked about.
So any issues, concerns, additions?
Well, you know what?
Ah,
and off-premise, and I just thought, you know what, if they're gonna be prohibited, why not put that in the definition too? Then it makes it clear, don't even think about it. We don't even allow those, so I was just checking to see, and I'm gonna look at rotating signs here. Rotating sign could say prohibited as well in the definition. And that was it. Just, again, for consistency.
Chair Barton, the IT guys are asking everyone to please turn on their mics when they're talking, if they're not currently on.
Oh, geez, mine was even off. I must have knocked it off when I was moving my packet around. We apologize. Dang. Okay.
any other comments about prohibited signs?
Anybody think anything else should be prohibited?
Well, we're moving right along. Okay, so the next conversation topic, this is new. We have a table that says what kind of sign is permitted where. And on this first slide, you're looking at, so I've separated signs by districts and then whether it's for a residential use versus a non-residential use. Because you could have some uses in the residential districts like schools or churches or what have you that should probably have greater access to signage than your residents would. So the sign types for residential uses in those residential districts, we would allow.
So on the, if we're, are you thinking of including a little grid like this in the,
Yep, it's in the ordinance now.
okay, then we'd want to, at least explain what NP and P are.
Ah.
We know, but casual readers might not. For one, the initial question might be, does that mean I need a permit or no permit?
So maybe allowed instead of a P.
Instead of permitted versus not permitted.
Oh, yeah, you probably don't want to call it permitted because permitting has its own.
Exactly, so NP, you want to say what
Want
NP
to say allowed, not
means.
allowed.
Right.
Good point.
Well, it's those things that,
Don't confuse by using the same word for two different things.
Right.
Is what you're saying.
well, it is what makes people question.
Lovely English language that we live with.
So now that I'm evaluating this, again, this seems incorrect. I have freestanding, internal wayfinding, and temporary informal as being allowed in residential districts for for residential uses. I'm trying to think if that makes sense. I would agree that the informal should be allowed, but what residential use? Oh, multifamily. That's what I was thinking. You might have a freestanding sign for a multifamily establishment, and also wayfinding.
Right.
Okay.
But this wouldn't allow you to have like a wall sign on an apartment complex.
Correct.
Now,
Would you want that? We could add that.
I don't know, I'm just saying.
yeah, kind of tied up with that is maybe how we're defining non-residential use. And I guess it's in terms of, is a non-residential use the rental office of a large complex? And would that then allow them to have an awning type sign or something like that that would
I think that makes sense, and
tell
that's
people,
clarification that,
this is where you go if you want to, talk to somebody in the rental
Would that
part
be,
of it, or,
yeah, yeah.
So
Because it's
how we
essentially
define.
that part of it is essentially a business use.
Yeah, in essence, it's a business.
Right.
But we ought to clarify that definition so that people understand that, it isn't residential, but it is a business and it's connected to the residential.
I think that's a good clarification. We also do not define residential or non-residential within the definition section, so we can make those additions.
But from a zoning perspective, multifamily is a residential use.
Sure, but I like the distinction that
Yeah.
Commissioner Geldman's making.
Yeah. I guess, I'm just asking the question about any other kind of sign that, if you think about the newer complexes that we have, especially like the one along 36, a monument sign on the ground isn't very helpful from people zipping by on 36. And that seemed a site where maybe somebody, might want something on the facade
Yeah.
of their building.
Point of clarification, are those
Yeah,
apartment complexes you're referring to, are they in the mixed-use districts?
actually, it might be, yes.
Because those
It
would be
might be.
regulated differently. Let me look at your zoning
That's a
map.
good point.
Although, was it the same? Can't remember. Nope, mixed use, residential uses, NP for wall, NP for canopy.
Oh, wait, I'm confused. Are you looking at the draft ordinance now?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that's what struck me. It's like the only thing that's allowed in any district, whether it's mixed use or just residential, is freestanding, internal wayfinding, and temporary for a residential use. And that just doesn't seem to fit anymore. So again, just something for everybody to consider. I'm trying to, what does the Sentinel have downtown?
By those townhouses, M&I could swear they have a light-up sign on the side of the building there.
They could,
The townhouse there, because where the rental is, where
Uh-huh.
that spot there, that's a
Yeah.
lit-up one.
and that's certainly a residential use. Just something for us all to consider as we think about. I think we're just kind of getting used to what these,
I would say that you're right on a large multifamily development to allow a wall sign would make sense.
yeah. It does, I mean, it
How
does to me.
how it gets put in here, I'm not sure, but I think that does make sense.
Well, go ahead.
I'm sorry. The discussion is kind of opening my mind too. The awning and the canopy also might be appropriate.
Yep, yep, same thing.
Yes.
Okay.
That's what you mentioned, Rick, yeah, the canopy thing. I mean, they're not going to need marquee or projecting, probably
No, you
roof,
don't need to go
no.
that far.
But the rest, and not a billboard, obviously, but the rest of them don't seem unreasonable.
So for multifamily.
Yeah, for multifamily, and that's what's, when you do it just by district, that is what makes it a little trickier.
Well, it's by district and use. So
Yeah, but it's a residential use.
correct.
And a residential use can be a single-family home, too.
Right. So as
Not that they'd want this, but,
so if it's a multifamily use in the MU, one of the MU districts, that's how I think it works out.
yeah,
With the grid.
yeah. Maybe we need just more differentiation in the residential, or in the residential versus, or mixed use, pardon me, multifamily versus single-family somehow.
Are you saying R3 for multifamily? Is that?
Well, we can have multifamily in any R district now. And we have apartment buildings in the R district.
Oh, okay.
That's all I'm saying, is I can see them benefiting from something other than just a monument sign. If they choose to. They don't have to, but, to have some kind of options.
Okay. I think I have the clarification that I need to get
Yeah,
this worked out.
okay,
Do
perfect.
you have any other comments for the R districts?
No,
Okay, let's move on to the MU districts.
I think that was,
Perhaps, well, we didn't talk about the aggregate sign area.
Well, that discussion's coming up.
Okay, fine.
then let me ask a question back on the R district. It's back to a question I've had for a long time, and that's the little sign dimensional standards. Okay. We used to, well, in code now, we require an address sign for public safety purposes, so emergency services can find a location. So that's a requirement. in every district. And I didn't see that in here, but every time I think of that, it reminds me that for residential, R1 and R2, 2 square feet is the maximum aggregate sign area, which makes no sense.
Correct. Well, that's what it is. We could address this under the exemptions of the ordinance. I have listed building addresses.
Well, you state the exemption, but we have written in code, you need to have this. This is one sign you have to have.
But the exemption for the purpose of the sign ordinance means.
Yeah, they don't count. That, I understand. They
Right,
don't
so it
count.
doesn't count towards your square footage.
No. It shouldn't, because you have to have it.
Okay.
What I'm saying is, a 2 square foot sign
Uh-huh.
for R1 and R2, that's nothing.
But
I mean, from here's how much you can have.
what is
perspective,
what
that's
would be the
so-
purpose of that sign in an R1 district?
Well, again, an R1 can have a duplex, it can have a twin home, we can have townhomes, we have apartment
Could be a
complexes.
home occupation.
It could be a home occupation. I mean, that's just so tiny that it doesn't seem to,
Especially
Make a
if we
whole lot
allow
of
32 square feet of
right,
temporary
of
sign. or
temporary.
informal sign.
Make it all up with
Oh, right.
temporary.
Yeah, that's right.
My
Well,
permanent temporary signs.
I think the intent is that these sign standards include those temporary signs as well.
It says, the maximums, it says it doesn't count.
Where do I say that?
Temporary doesn't count. I saw that.
Oh, okay. Well, thanks for that clarification.
That's what I think that's what brought it to mind, because I thought, this,
You could probably make that 8 square feet and it would be just fine.
probably, I mean, I'm trying to think of what
Yeah,
the
2 feet
apartment
by 4
complex
feet.
down from me, what they have. I don't know how big their sign is, and it's not a huge complex, but it's certainly bigger than 2 square feet, the sign. And they're in an R1.
So R1 and R2, bump it up to 8?
I would think at least.
Yeah, I mean, why does R3 get 24?
Because it's multifamily.
Well, but we have multifamily in R1 and R2. That's what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand why it's 2 square feet. I've never understood that. I've questioned it many times.
Has it always been 2?
Yes. It's never made sense to me.
I guess the thing I'm thinking about is like, roofing companies will come and drop their signs, and maybe those are temporary.
Those are temporary,
Those are
yeah.
the things I'm thinking, I want to hear the 2 square feet.
Yeah.
But I don't know, is 8, are you sure you want to quadruple it from what we have now? Because do you want every one of your neighbors to have an 8 square foot sign?
Well, most people are not, number one, not going to do that, but we have to we have to consider the fact that right now, the apartment complex down the street from me is violating this. Because they have a sign permanent sign that's at least 24. It's probably 24 square feet. Might be more. And now they have a second one on the other road. So they've got 2 of them. And it's perfectly fine. It doesn't look out of place. It's an apartment complex. So again, it's the same thing. We have to maybe kind of differentiate on this one.
Well, back to both of your points. I don't know what this was intended to do with the 2 square foot, but under the new proposed ordinance, these dimensional standards, like you clarified, aren't for temporary. It's only for those building signs, which you're not allowed to have.
And that's what I'm talking about.
Or freestanding signs, which nobody's going to pull a permit to put a freestanding sign in their yard.
I'm talking about monument signs, that type of thing, which
Right. So I'm trying to rationalize why it's okay to go up to 24 perhaps for every district, because it's really intended for your multifamily buildings.
This is where what the actual use is makes a difference when you're talking residential. Because for the most part, businesses, businesses, but we're talking, you've got single-family homes, you've got multifamily of various sorts. And I think that just has to be something that we factor in here. So I'm not talking about 24 square feet for a single-family home as a permanent sign. What I'm saying is that's not unreasonable for a multifamily.
Okay, so I think what you're saying is expand at least for the residential districts, expand the residential to include the 3 types of residential you might actually have, single-family, 2-family, or multifamily.
I think we need to, don't you?
Well, it makes, yes, this is a helpful discussion.
Yeah, it just.
And then non-residential within those districts, and that kind of.
Yeah, the non-residential is fine.
So if I wanted to come up with a name for my property and put a sign up with that name on it, that would be my limitation, and it would have to be permitted.
If it's one of those sign types.
That's the other thing. It's got to be permitted when you're talking about a permanent sign.
Right.
I'm not going to do that, but.
Oh, I know. Well, it's kind of
I
interesting.
was just trying to come up with an example of what would somebody do in a single family.
Well, I'll tell you what one of my neighbors did. This was really interesting, and I just noticed it not that long ago because I was seeing this light flashing. And I thought, what the heck? And I looked over, and at the top of her garage that she just remodeled, she's got this huge number sign giving her address, and it flashes.
Oh.
All night long, and I thought, wow, I've never seen anything like that. Now, that's in addition to her normal sign, her
Probably
address
won't be
sign.
permitted when we're done with this.
No, no,
Does she plug that in when she orders pizza or something?
I think it comes on automatically because it's there even when she's traveling. It's and I thought, that's actually not a little kind of, I'm home, don't think I'm not home because it's dark. So it's almost like a deterrent, but it just made me kind of laugh thinking, wow.
Okay,
Wonder what that costs.
Now that you're mentioning that, I'm looking at our lighting standards, and I think we may have lost the no flashing. It's probably under the electronic sign, but that doesn't really cover what you're talking about.
Oh, I wasn't even talking about that. I was just talking about how big it was. So
Right.
what might somebody do? Well, you never know what they'll do. Oh, I thought flashing was, or did we just,
I think it's probably under the electronic signs regulations.
oh.
But an address sign that happens to be a light, it's not really an electronic message center.
No, it's not. I just thought, didn't we somewhere? We'll find it later.
I think I might just add that to the list of prohibitions if.
Flashing signs.
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, but we were going to define what a flashing sign means.
Well,
'Cause
signs that
I think what we
flash.
need to do is we need to allow lit signs, internally lit, externally lit, whatever. We need to allow lit signs, and then we need to define it's because I think we need to include the changeable message electronic signs.
Yep.
Right?
We
The
have,
ones that you can put graphics on, like
Correct.
the Holiday Station has.
That's in here.
Casey Lake Park has. And we need to define the brightness factor and how fast the message changes.
yep, we have that included in this
All
draft.
in here, okay.
Yeah. Down
But I think,
Because that's what defines your flashing.
yeah,
But not for those
but
garage
not
signs
for
that are addresses.
non-electronic
Yeah,
message
sure.
boards is what you're saying. I think also, I'm not certain. Well, when we get to lighting, maybe we can care for that in there, because we also don't address in here that we don't want bare bulbs. I mean, there's backlit, external and internal types of lighting, but one of the things that you don't want is just bare bulbs.
Why?
So marquee bulbs?
Well,
Marquee bulbs?
marquee is,
Oh,
Yeah.
Bare
guess
bulbs.
what, everybody? Oh, it's in the downtown. Your downtown overlay district regulations prohibit flashing signs and bare bulb lights
yeah, that's where I remember reading it, right.
In the downtown?
in the
district?
downtown,
Mhm.
yeah.
That's all, remember, that's all the globe stuff that hangs down and tricks down. Okay, well,
So would that mean like string lights? Like if like a business decided to string some lights up for their patio seating or something, is that?
No, I don't think I wouldn't interpret it that way, but maybe that does warrant some clarification. I think we have an example of this in River Falls where it's a sign that's like an arrow and the edges of the arrow are bulbs that light up. I think it was a pretty popular sign style back in the day. But I would imagine that you wouldn't want to prohibit Christmas lights as decorative.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, like string lights or carnival lights, I mean, I wouldn't say that's a sign, really, that's, right, I mean, it's.
Correct. Maybe I have that listed as a not seasonal decorations. Yeah, I think you could comfortably interpret that to be a seasonal decoration.
There you go.
Keep track of the time. Keep track of the time.
You want the gavel?
You get
We'll
your
have to
half.
split the check this month or this.
You want the gavel and we can adjourn right now?
Yes, everybody home.
She comes back, everybody's
Good guy
gone.
talks.
Lights out.
Good guy took
All right.
over, everybody went home.
Getting a little informal here, sorry.
That's not a problem.
See what I caused?
Should we move along to the district, the MU district sign regulations?
It looks like you don't have numbers in there for size.
For size.
I lost it. It's in here.
Oh, yep, that was one of my topics of conversation. Let's look at the permitted versus not permitted table first.
I think we treat the residential uses the same way we did up in the previous.
Okay.
The only significant changes, the signs for non-residential uses is almost everything is permitted, which I think makes sense.
Sounds good.
A billboard is permitted in MU3.
Yeah, I think that's a mistake, so I will remove billboard from this table. I did check in Google Maps just to verify whether or not you had anything along Highway 36, and I didn't see any billboards, so I think it's okay to exempt it at this time. Oh, I think I do have a slide for, if you want to move forward to the one with the picture. Yeah, here we go. So this is the dimensional standard discussion. It's a little hard to see there, but let me get it in front of me. Okay, I've left it undefined presently. I put your current regulations in there. So your current code, based on the building square footage and the type of sign that you have, there's variations in the total aggregate sign area, but in the MU districts, it ranges from 150 to 400 square feet. So building area is one way to calculate that. Other communities use street frontage as an alternative calculation, and I just selected any old building that I could find, and I grabbed one off of McKnight, and the area of that building is about 16,000 square feet, and it's in the MU3. So that building would have 200 square feet of signage allowed under the existing code. And if we were to do a lineal foot calculation for frontage, it would be maybe 150 square feet if it was, 1 for 1, or it could be 300 if you were to do 2 for every lineal foot. So it depends on how much signage you think is appropriate for your businesses. I don't have the actual calculations of how big those signs are on the site, but it looks like they've got 3. There's 2 on the pole, and then there's a small sign attached to the canopy there.
Can I ask, besides area, is there another way that would be a little bit more enforceable? Sometimes, I can't really see, folks sitting there and calculating and then enforcing that. So I'm just thinking, is there something a little bit more upfront?
Like
without
number.
calculating?
Usually area is a percentage of wall face.
That's
It's
what I was
not at all uncommon. Well, certainly for wall signs,
Sure, sure.
but for post-mounted or a monument sign, that, I don't think it needs to relate to building area at all.
No, I agree. Something on the building, that makes sense.
Do it as a percentage of the building face that the sign is on. If you have a 4,000 square foot building face, then you can have, 10% of it can be a sign or whatever it is.
The street facing,
That would be too much, of course, but,
the street facing.
yeah, well, whatever face you put it on.
Yeah,
I don't expect people are going to be putting the sign on the side of the building that people
Not
can't
normally.
see, so,
not normally.
But the calculation of the wall area is the wall in question.
yeah.
I think that's good. I can research and figure out, what other communities are doing in terms of that percentage, unless you've got something
Yeah.
in mind.
And then how would you relate that to like a monument or a pole sign, or would you?
That's the question is, should we just have a number for a monument or a pole sign? And it is what it is, no matter how big your building is.
How about how big your lot is?
Well, I think that would just automatically come into play potentially. If you have a small lot, your sign's probably logically going to be smaller unless you are an ornery owner and you want to.
Right. Is that almost self-policing? Or would somebody with a large lot want a monstrous wall of a sign? That's where the issue comes in, not so much for the small lots.
I like the idea of having one standard size because that makes it uniform across the city.
There might need to be a minimum size for the sign.
For
Because if you've got
visibility?
a small building, a drive-through coffee place, they may not have a lot of front face.
Maybe you say it's
it-
X percent, or it's 10 square feet or X percent,
Yeah,
kind of a thing.
Mhm.
10 square feet minimum,
yeah.
but you don't want to give them a minimum. You don't want to require them to have a sign of a minimum size.
Yeah.
I don't
Well,
think.
it's a maximum minimum.
Yeah, the maximum minimum.
Tricky.
I like that
Can
one.
you figure out a way to define that, Brandy? A maximum, minimum?
Your minimum can't be lower
I
than.
understand what you're saying, but if we had a storefront face that was 200 square feet, and we said you can only have, a sign that's 5% of that,
Yeah.
Is it getting too small,
Or-
is what you're saying?
Or up to 10 square feet. Up to 10 square feet or 2%, whichever is larger.
Yeah, whichever is larger.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Are we
That makes
talking,
sense?
that's the way to write it, I think.
are we talking about building signs or all?
Building signs. They're talking about a building sign, right?
For sure.
As opposed to a freestanding sign.
Yeah, I'm not sure about how to handle the freestanding signs.
I like the idea of the freestanding sign just being a defined size based on the district you're in or something.
I would suggest that the wall sign size would probably be self-policing because nobody that wants to install a sign wants it to be so small to not be visible.
Right.
And I don't know about the zoning administration of it could be challenging to, well, I guess it's not challenging if it's predefined, but.
Well, the other thing is, look at, pick a place, one of the strip centers.
Polar?
You're defining the sign for a particular tenant based on their face,
Sure.
not based on the whole face of the
Right.
building. So for individual tenant signage, you need to treat those as the building face. So we need to just make sure that we're describing it correctly.
And in that particular case, you also have the pylon that gives that serves the
And
monument-type
the
sign thing.
pylon can be the size that is suitable for the entire property.
Exactly.
And then the landlord defines who gets
divvy
what
it up.
size sign on the
Exactly.
pylon.
So those particular shops can't depend on that pylon. They also need that
Right.
street level.
Right. They can negotiate with the landlord whether they
Right.
get pylon space or not.
Right. I'm trying to think of just a standalone business somewhere to use as an example. When you're talking about, either
For a
the wall
pylon?
or the monument
Yeah, or
even.
a monument.
I mean, and that's not an electronic one. It's hard to, we used to have Silver Lake Market, but we don't have that anymore. So I haven't thought of one.
Okay, so.
We'll think on that.
Okay, so.
You think on that too and come up with a really good idea.
I think I got a little lost in the conversation. To reiterate, wall signs, it's gonna be a certain percentage of the building area, possibly,
The percentage of the building face.
building face.
Yeah.
Not the building floor area.
Oh, that's what I wrote down. I wrote down face. I just said the
Yeah.
wrong thing. A maximum area for freestanding signs. I'll figure out some options for that. The wall sign could have a minimum,
Yeah.
potentially.
We were talking about it a little differently. I think it was, say 10 square feet or a percentage of the front face.
Right, at least 10 square
Whichever is-
feet, up to,
Yeah, up to that amount, whichever is larger.
okay, did that cover that discussion then?
Yes.
Okay. And then the multi-tenant buildings, there is a section on that, which I believe came from your existing code more or less, and I maybe modified it just for simplification purposes.
Oh, there is item B under that, maximum square footage requirements for all individual signs on the buildings.
And that could just default, well, it'll default to the sign standards that we're creating.
Right, same with one freestanding or monument sign, right?
Right. So everybody can have their name on that one freestanding sign.
Right.
And maybe this section needs to allow for a larger sign in the cases of multifamily, or, sorry,
Now, these require a master sign plan.
yes. We got one in recently for a permit over, I think it's across the street from your Target. There's an animal hospital. I don't remember if it was the animal.
Oh,
hospital
okay,
that got us-
yeah, they're part of that, okay,
Yep.
okay.
Used to be Window World, that one?
But
So
that,
it seems to work, okay, right.
yeah, okay,
how
that,
it is.
okay. I was just trying to think of one that would have been required recently, okay. So that takes care of those little fill in the blanks.
Okay, let's see, what else do we have on the agenda here? Oh, the last item, planned unit development signs. What I have in the ordinance is from your existing code, I think, more or less. I don't care for it. And I don't know what you guys want to do about that, if anything.
Well, I agree with you, first off, you don't give that kind of discretion.
Yeah,
You just administer this code, you don't change it based upon, well, I think this is a good idea.
yeah. So the first question is, do we want to be flexible with the sign code?
For a PUD. Well, I guess, why would we need to? What would be so unique about a PUD?
Well, that's what PUDs are about, is so that they can do things different from what the.
Well,
normal
but not
ordinance would
everything,
require.
just some things.
Right, but some things.
And I don't know that our PUD, well, you took this
I took it
the
from your sign
PUD,
code.
which does allow this,
That came from your sign ordinance. Let me look and see what your PUD ordinance says.
because our PUD really is supposed to say what can be deviated.
What section are you looking
I don't remember that it might say, might cover signs in there, it's a long section of code.
I'm gonna find it here, just a moment.
Where is that? The PUD reference?
It might just reference that there needs to be a master sign plan without any more detail than that. I just don't recall.
Flexibility. The city may provide concessions in setbacks, density, lot size, street width, or parking.
Yeah.
I
Well, I
say
knew
we,
signs wasn't one.
yeah, I would suggest getting rid of this completely.
I don't think we need it. Now, is there anything in the, as long as you're in the PUD, is there anything about requiring a master sign plan? Or whatever we call it.
In the section before that, there is under multi-tenant buildings.
In the PUD?
No, under
Yeah.
multi-tenant buildings, there's.
Yeah, I know there is for that, but
No, no.
PUD is entirely different.
There's a sign plan uniquely adapted to address visibility, whatever.
I do not see anything related to signs.
Well, then I don't think we need to have it in the sign code.
Okay.
I think it's a mistake.
There is reference to it. Well, there's reference to the sign plan under the PUD.
In the what?
Under PUD, there's reference to a sign
What
plan.
does it say?
It says a sign plan is uniquely adapted to address the visibility needs of development while remaining consistent with the intent of this section to direct high-quality signage. And then it says the sign plan includes permanent sign covenants, which can be enforced by the city.
I'm confused. Are you looking at the,
I'm looking at 157.008.
That's the sign, that's the new proposed sign thing.
Signs
We
and
were talking
planned-
about the PUD ordinance itself.
Oh, I see.
And it's not mentioned in there, so we
Okay.
should not, that means we can't allow deviation from it.
correct, I would agree with that.
I didn't understand what you were looking at, sorry.
Unless we want to start to do that, and I can't see a reason to do it.
No.
I could see maybe if you were one of those communities that didn't want to have electronic signs be everywhere, it might be through the PUD process that you might do that.
Yeah. But then, you just don't allow them for multi-use properties, because that's essentially what a PUD usually is, multi-tenant.
Which
type
we've got
thing.
that covered through the multi-tenant sign.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay.
That is all I had for discussion topics. So I would open it up to the commission to guide the discussion any further.
Oh, I had a question. Aren't we going to include a substitution clause?
Can you remind me what that is?
That's the one that says anybody with a sign can substitute the message with any other non-commercial message. That was something that was added to our prior one that, and that's just a legal thing, that it's required that you put in, or that it's recommended you put in. And it kind of protects yourself against any charge of favoring commercial speech
It's in your
over
current-
non-commercial, but I just didn't spot it in here. Maybe it is.
No, it's not.
It's in our current one,
Okay.
and the other comment I
Oh,
had,
here it is. Any sign allowed under this section may contain, in lieu of any other message or copy, any lawful non-commercial message or copy.
that's in the current code.
Yep, I can bring that into this
Yeah,
code.
I would bring that. There's one other that I thought should be brought in. Where's that? I have all my little notes here.
Severability?
Oh, the severability, yes,
Okay.
yes. And in the permit process,
Are we looking at the draft now? Or the current permit process?
this one here, what page is that on? Where it says what the permit thing is. I should look at the little, oh, it doesn't have that. Permits, page 3, okay. The permit piece should include a time frame that they'll be permitted within. That was bad construction of a sentence, wasn't it?
Giving the city a required timeframe? Like we will, we'll review it and respond in.
Within
4
X
days?
number of a month
Oh.
or whatever it
Do
might
we
be.
do that with building permits? Do we have a similar requirement?
Signs are slightly different.
Well, I'm just saying, if there's a time limit on any other permitting,
Yeah, I don't know what, well,
That
we
the
know
city
what it
does.
is like for zoning permits. I don't know what it is if there's a building permit one.
or
A month?
6 months, or they could request an extension.
No, by the time you process it, for the processing.
processing time.
That's ASAP, I'm sure, for building permits.
Should we
But
put
for
60
sign-
days in there for?
Pardon me?
Should we put 60 days in to be consistent with your other zoning permits?
That's a long time if you're waiting to put a sign up.
But that's planning ahead.
Well, and that's the maximum. I don't think customer service-wise, you would want your staff to
Yeah.
let somebody wait.
I mean, you can
It
throw
covers
that
you.
in there and see what people think, but there also should be a process spelled out for people to appeal.
What's the process? That's part of the equation is, what's the process? Who needs to review it?
It should be a slam dunk because
Is it just a
you know,
staff review, or is it come
It
to
is,
us?
No,
or is
it's
it?
a staff review.
Yeah, if it's just staff review, then
it shouldn't take any time at all
it
because
shouldn't take more than about
it
30.
meets it or it doesn't. They got to be that clear.
Correct.
But there also should be an appeal process that's actually spelled out. What do people do if it gets denied and they want to fight that?
Okay, so included appeal process plus the general application process plus,
At least the time frame, because it says you have to, you know, doesn't it say you have to apply? I think we should probably tell them what the process is, a little bit anyway.
Do we have forms for such things?
I'm sure it's an online form, special form
I
sign.
haven't had to do it. so-
I don't know either.
yep, we've got a process established, so I'll just clarify what that is.
Now I have to go to, I'm going to go through my list of notes. You know, one thing I'll just mention, Lisa, you can maybe pass it on. You know, I've been using the Civic Clerk so I can just make notes right in it. But I noticed that when I print, it doesn't print the packet number, you know, the number X of X. It just prints that that section I'm looking at. So when I was looking at this, the sign section, when I printed my notes, it really just gave me like page 2, page 3, and I thought,
And that's in your print option, so it's not a civic clerk. And I can explain that to you later.
yeah. It just was something I noticed, and I thought, well, dang, so I had to do one of these. Well, let me go page through and number them that way. So on page 48, and maybe you guys talked about this, I'm sorry if you did, but for the temporary signs, for banner and feather, there's no size limit?
We did not talk about that. Be happy to hear your thoughts. I was thinking feather signs, typically, they come what they come. I mean, that's a standard manufacturer size, and it's more the number of them on a site that you would probably
I'm
be
asking
concerned.
Yeah.
because that's one of the things you can
If
regulate.
it was 30 feet tall, that would be some significant sign. That would.
Well, a feather sign, you could probably get some pretty good sized ones.
Yeah, but they'll just blow away.
And even
Well,
banner
or if you had
signs.
50 of them.
Even banner signs. You can get some pretty big banner
But
signs.
that's another case where we're limiting it to 32 square feet or something.
Are we temporary?
Well, that, I guess, is part of that.
No, we're
equation.
not. I mean, you know,
Ought to be, though.
That's
banner
part of the
sign-
equation is how much total square footage can you have?
well, it's limited to one sign per property. So my question is, the banner sign is, so my question is there a limit as to the size?
Well, in the size for banner signs, I left that blank on purpose because they can come in various shapes, sizes, and they could have.
They can come really
span
big.
across your street. Yeah, they can be very
It
big.
can be very large.
You could easily have a 600 square foot banner sign, no question, on
Yeah.
on a face of a building, attached to the building. Bigger than that, easily, but
And if it,
even just a moderately sized one could be 600 feet, 1,000 feet.
is that a concern?
I'm just asking because we do have it for other, I mean, we have it for an A-frame, which obviously makes sense. We have it for a flag sign, we have it for,
You would get to a limit. You would get,
so I'm just, and window, we just say no more than 25% of the window.
could you limit it the same way you limit it by percentages of face?
You sure
Or
could.
if you're putting it on a building?
Yep.
If you put it on a building, you could do it as a percentage of the building face.
How about if I string it between two trees?
I'm sorry, I was saying 600 feet, that would be huge.
In my yard. I got lots of
But
trees.
if you string it between two trees, yeah, I mean.
You could have it there, but for no more than 21 days.
Well, so I could do it for 21 days. So I could do any size banner. I am just clarifying
You
this.
could do a banner on a frame of some sort that's freestanding or something like that.
Well, I don't have any skin in the game here, so I'm happy to change it to whatever is most appropriate.
It's just something to think about. Pay attention as you're driving around.
What the right answer is for
When I was driving through town tonight, I just happened to notice a banner sign on Sidewinders, known for banner signs. That didn't look all that good, but I thought, well, I don't believe that's probably allowed right now.
Okay, so we'll put a pin in this one and maybe
Yeah.
discuss that? Okay.
I just wanted to bring this to the conversation, if I may. The city is actually considering a banner for our 125th year anniversary. So would that, I guess we'd have to look at that, if we could use that as a big street sign. Those are the kinds of things that may come into play
Yeah,
in this situation.
yes, and I think, isn't this the one that talked about banner signs extending across a public street?
It does.
Which is, potentially 60 feet.
Well, this one, the ordinance is drafted, says that if they do extend across the street, it's only by permission of the governing body.
Oh, I understand.
Oh, okay.
No, it just kind of made me realize, boy, banner signs can be really big.
We should comply with our own ordinance, you're saying, when we put one up?
Did we exempt ourselves just from everything? Something else.
I have an item.
Oh, go ahead.
Were you finished with your item?
I had one more. I
Go for it.
almost
Go for it. I
hesitate to
just
bring it up.
wanna
Maybe I missed it
Get
again.
lost. Go for it.
And I'm like I'm having trouble comprehending what we're trying to do here. And that's on temporary signs with the flag sign.
Oh.
And we,
I don't know what we're doing with flag signs, so I'll leave that one up to you guys, because I'm going back and forth on this.
well, the second sentence, I mean, it talks about here's my issue, if I can explain it as simply as I can. Right now, we define a flag sign as something that is advertising. Okay, so it's a commercial message.
I'd like to get rid of this flag sign out of here.
I couldn't
Okay.
agree, I mean, I'm just really, and then when we talk about nothing can prohibit the display of this kind of non-commercial, you can't prohibit the display of any non-commercial message, as long as you allow flags, and that's perfectly fine.
I think, here's what you
It's like a
could-
banner. It's no
Yes, I
different
was
than a
just going to
banner.
say that. Let's get rid of number 5.
Thank you.
Got it.
Okay.
And I would get rid
So
of,
Flag signs are really
I would
banners?
seriously consider changing the definition of a flag sign.
I think we just need to get it out of the definitions, too.
Take it out of the.
I don't have a problem. Everybody, I think most people know what a flag is.
Yeah.
I mean, you can define it, but I don't think you need to. But I do think that it makes sense to specifically allow them.
We do. We exempt from this code flags.
Right.
If it has a message on it that's an advertising, I think then it could be argued that it's
Then
a
it's
sign.
entirely different.
And then it is
Exactly.
general provisions for the informal sign.
Yeah, then it's almost, like I say, banners and flags, there's really not a significant difference, even in their definition.
So we aren't going to restrict the size of a flag, correct?
We
Because you
could,
said you have not included flags, it's exempt from this code. You just said that.
I did say that because a flag is not a sign.
well, I don't think you want to exempt a flag and a flagpole.
I think if you're going to require,
Just put, I mean,
I think if you're going to maximize the size of a flag, like if somebody wanted to put a big American flag up, if you wanted to regulate the maximum size American flag, that would not be in.
well, not
this-
just
It
American.
would not
you
be in a
can't do
sign
that.
code. It would be
Correct.
somewhere else.
I agree with that. Same
That's
with your
the thing.
pole.
Yeah.
Yep,
So
I
you
just-
take flags out of here.
Yep.
entirely.
Here's the issue. Anything we don't allow isn't permitted, essentially. If we don't address it, you
No,
can
I
take the
disagree with that.
position that that's not, we don't allow that.
I don't know if that's true elsewhere in your ordinance, but in this draft, I had stated for the informal signs that if it's not here and listed, then it would adhere to the general provision.
It might go to the planning commission or something like that.
Oh, that's right, we had that in there too.
Because again, what you don't want is for somebody to mistakenly treat, one flag differently from another, because you can't do that.
In the exemption section, I listed the things that are not regulated by the ordinance, and those things are all not signs, and flag is among them. So also the building address, plaques.
So then you're allowing anything. So yes, they could put up any size they wanted, anywhere.
Unless it's regulated someplace else in your
Unless it's
code.
regulated somewhere else.
Well, it's just not.
It could be if it
Not-
needs to be.
It could be if we wanted to regulate it,
If we wanted to, but we're not talking
but
about
we
that.
aren't doing that right now.
I guess my problem, what is the concern with just including them and allowing them
We are allowing
We are.
them.
with no regulation?
Correct.
Yeah, that's
And
the way
if
it
you,
is right
if you
now.
want to have no regulation, that's all right, but I don't see any harm in regulating either the size or the number.
But
The
we're going to do
flags?
that in a different place other than the
Where?
sign ordinance. If we're going to
I
do
think,
it.
I'm confused. I think we did a circle, because I thought we were taking it out. And now,
Yep, take it out of here.
take it out, take flags out of the ordinance, out of the
Yeah.
sign.
I don't agree with that.
No?
I thought we just decided that.
No, I mean, I think it makes sense to include them, and a lot of places do it, and it just makes sense, because can I have 5 flagpoles? And 5, of any height? Again, it's like, you regulate them because they are a flag as when on a flagpole. It is a structure, obviously. And if you're going to regulate the size of a banner or whatever, there's nothing wrong with saying it can be no more than whatever size you want to come up
We
with.
regulate the pole.
Yeah.
Well,
If
we do as a
power.
structure, but we don't,
If we're
yes,
regulating.
as far as it can't be in the setback.
Okay, let me ask this question. If flags are not regulated by this signage code, where would, if we wanted to regulate the size of flags, for instance, or the height of poles, where in the ordinance would that occur if it didn't occur here?
Also, is there a catch-all for something where if it's not regulated, does it go before a certain, like, for the planning commission if it doesn't cover under a regulation? What is the default?
But then we have to
allowed, is what
come
you're
up with the regulation,
Yeah, but we can't sit here every day or all night.
which we don't want to do.
Every single way to get around something either. So there's always gonna be, people are gonna put their brains to it, they're gonna figure out a way around something. That's kind of our job here to go, I'm sorry.
Well, that's why you try to set the standards that,
Yeah, we do, but
want.
we're not gonna be able to set a standard for everything. So we're gonna just get ours as much as we can, and then there's gonna be funnel things through, I think.
well, here's my take. We're setting it for banners. I don't look at a flag as any different than a banner. I really don't. They're the same kind of material, where they're almost defined as exactly the same thing. As a matter of fact, I could probably call it a banner if I just, tacked some kind of flag to the side of my house.
Okay, so what I think you're saying is just take the word flag remove it from the exemptions.
I wouldn't, well, exempt from permit, I don't have a problem with that.
No, it'd be exempt from, we're not gonna regulate the United States flag in the sign code.
I'm not talking about the United States flag.
Well,
We're talking
That's
about
the
flag
problem.
signs.
I'm talking about a flag.
it is a flag. I'm not sure what you, How are you defining them
But
differently?
before you said you can't distinguish, you can't regulate between a United States flag and another flag, so.
Well, we can't have different we can't
Yeah.
say you can do this flag, but you can't do that.
Exactly, so then that
Blah, blah,
goes back
That's what I'm
to-
getting at. The minute you start identifying a type of flag,
Yep,
like the
Right.
United States or whatever,
Yep.
you can't do that.
But if we
in
can't
code.
regulate the American flag, we can't regulate any flag, is what you're saying.
No, we can regulate every flag in certain ways.
But the
Okay.
flag is
Size.
it's a banner.
Location. That's what I'm saying.
I think that's, yes, I would agree.
We
So we're
can
just
do
gonna
that.
take out the flag references, and if we are presented with a flag that meets the requirements for the definition of sign, then we will regulate it as a banner, or it would trigger the general provisions.
That would be a Star-Spangled Banner, right?
That was good.
You know,
That was good, Rick.
I'm going to bring some examples of codes that do it very simply, because I don't understand why we don't just want to make it simple. And say, you can have this
If you have an
many.
example, I'd be interested in.
They're almost every code does it,
Well, I
particularly after the Supreme Court got involved, because that's where cities were really making some big mistakes.
so what would you like to see it be?
I would just like to have it treated the same as other signs like banners, where all you talk about is size, location, that's it. How many? That's it. That's all you regulate. You don't regulate whether it's an MIA, the United States flag, or whether it's,
Taking flags out of there.
you know,
kinda does that
somebody's
thing.
civic logo or somebody's, family crest. You can put all kinds of things on a flag and fly them from a flagpole.
I think
That's what differentiates. Flags are on flagpoles, banners aren't usually. You can string them across the street, you can hang them off your balcony. Not that people don't do that with a flag, but still. That's all I'm saying, is that you can regulate them very simply. It's not complicated.
Here's the definition as we have drafted of a banner. A sign made from fabric or similar non-rigid material with no enclosing framework or electrical components that is supported or anchored on two or more edges or at four corners.
Right.
So I think that encompasses our flag discussion. But using the word flag, I think is.
The difference in the flag, I mean, the way we've identified it as a banner isn't flown from a flagpole.
But being the devil's advocate, I could fly a banner from a pole, because
Sure.
that would be thinking that somebody
Sure.
might try it.
The difference between the way we define a banner and most places do is we define flag specifically as fabric or flexible material attached or designed to be flown from a flagpole. And that's what it is. So to me, fine, then just regulate size, placement, just like number, just like you do banners.
if we want to
Except-
regulate it, yeah.
Yeah, and I think we should, because that makes it clear it is allowed.
I think.
And it also limits, so you don't
I
have
think
somebody
of the
with 20
cases that I've heard about where flags were too large for an ordinance, and there were court cases associated with it, because I want to put up the biggest possible
Sure.
American flag I can.
And that's, that.
And there was an
stipulates.
argument made that I should be able to do that because it's an American flag.
Yeah,
So, yeah, you're right. If you're going to regulate it, you have to regulate everything,
everything is the same.
no matter what the sign,
regardless.
flag.
Yeah, and I think we
demonstrates.
get so focused on flag means United States
Mm-hmm.
flag that we forget that there are a lot of other flags.
Yeah, it's a good example.
lot.
But, yeah.
Okay, can I get, sorry to interrupt, but I'd like to see if I'm following. So, regulate flags based on size, location, pole height, and the setback of the pole.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I think that just takes care of it. And then somebody doesn't have to go look and see, well, I got a flag, now where do I go look and see where I can put? Well, go over to this other section over here in zoning code.
So we want
Put it
600
here.
square feet is the maximum on that?
Do what?
I was kidding, 600
No.
square feet.
I didn't hear you,
I
though.
was kidding, I said 600 square feet maximum for the flag.
I just think, Well, there actually have been a lot of court cases about flags.
The 3,000 square foot flag that, yeah.
Well, and sometimes just the numbers,
100-foot pole.
just the numbers
Yeah,
of,
some
you
of them
know,
are huge.
I'm gonna put up 12 of these.
Yeah.
So that's why I say, go ahead and just put a reasonable limit, 2, 1, 2, whatever. Anyway,
Okay, got it. Rick had some comments?
Yes. On page 45 of 73, under 4D, thank you, we got it moved away from wattage, and we're talking about foot candles. But as I read it, I thought, you know, are we communicating with people reasonably? Do we have a good notion of what we mean when we say 0.3 candle foot above ambient light? So ambient light, I looked it up on Wikipedia, and it's 10,000 candle feet for unobstructed sunlight. So we're at 3/10 of a candle foot above that. Seems like a pretty, you know, pretty drastic difference there. And I guess I guess, you know, the big issue is I'm not sure I understand it, and I'm not sure if I'm not understanding how that works or what the dimensions are that we have here. Are people that read this going to understand it? I would imagine that it's, you know, for the most part, it's going to be, if they're building a monument, you know, EMC, then they're probably professionally dealing with illuminated signs and would understand it.
Where did the number come from?
It came from, I believe I pulled that from the, I forget what the organization is called, but the international,
The signage,
yeah,
yeah,
the,
the
National
illuminated
Sign
signage,
Group,
right,
yeah.
right. That
the
would be,
lobbying group.
yeah,
the
that would
foot
make
candle measurement, as a zoning administrator, I rely on applicants to submit landscaping or lighting plans that indicate what that is.
Right.
And that I go with that. I wouldn't have a clue how to measure it myself.
Okay.
So I take what you're saying as this is something that would be nice to have a little bit more
Yeah.
user-friendly.
That or at minimum, that we understand whether or not this is a reasonable standard.
Yeah. If
No,
it
I
came
don't,
from a-
I have no idea.
If it came from an international signage organization, I would rely on it as being a reasonable standard. But I agree that the signage manufacturer will be able to tell you, here are the qualities of my sign.
Okay, yeah.
So,
Something like that would be very helpful, I think, for everybody involved.
yep, that's the only way that we would be able to review it rationally.
So was anything added to this section, or did you guys change anything in this section?
We didn't discuss it when you were out of the room, if that's what you mean.
I'm sorry?
We didn't discuss it yet tonight.
Oh, I did have actually one question on it, since you brought it up. And that is, there's nothing about, now, let's do that another way. So we have the 8-second minimum dwell time. And then the next thing talks about any change from one static display to the next. Should I infer from that that all messages must be static?
As opposed to,
Moving
yes.
in any way,
Fading, animation.
fading,
which is
any,
Except for
referenced
when
there.
it's changing.
and then it's an immediate change.
Yes, that's the
I mean,
way I would interpret it as written.
That's, I just want, because when it talks about any change from one static display to another, well, what other kind of display can you have?
Another.
Aren't they all static?
No, they can.
I'm just asking,
Right.
are
they
we
can
gonna
animate,
require?
they can do all kinds of stuff.
I know
if
you can, I'm
allow it.
saying, are we saying they all must be static? Or are we saying they can be animated, or we can have breaks between signs,
I
little
know we
dancing
have animated
people?
signs over at Casey Lake,
And that's really very distracting and
It
impossible
is.
to read.
especially when it's bright white in the middle of the night.
Yes, that's terrible.
Yeah, a little more than
I mean, my take is they should be static because they need to be readable. And if things are moving around, and in some cases, you've got so much on one page that you can't read it.
So I think it's good the way it's written, based on what you're saying.
Well, I like, as long as it's clear, it's static. The thing that isn't, to me, addressed really is the readability. Because there have been some that have like 5 letters of, or 5 lines of words, and it's, you can't read that.
Right, but that's the sign designer problem.
No, that's who's ever got the sign, who's programming it, that's
right.
their problem.
Right, it is.
And that's what this addresses, is this is what we expect if you're gonna use that sign.
No, I don't think you can tell them that your letters need to be a certain height or anything like that.
Oh, you actually can.
No.
Yeah, you can. Just for the public safety aspect, because you're on the road, they're roadside, so yes, you can. But I think you
can,
can
and
at
there's
least
examples.
reference legibility.
Sure, but
Legible to whom?
Do you know who actually where
Legible
size,
to somebody going 50 miles an hour on the highway?
depending on whatever street front you're on?
Yeah, that's
That's how
way
you do
too
it.
complicated.
Yeah,
It's
from
like
an
a stop sign.
enforcement
You have to
standpoint, I
have
don't think that
letters of
it's
a
really
certain height.
practical.
No,
I don't agree.
you can't get to that level of detail.
I'm just
You'd
saying,
never be able to do
I
it.
think you need somehow to consider addressing it, because that was a big problem. Haven't driven by enough yet to know, but it was a huge problem with the Casey sign. It was just totally unreadable.
I know St. Pete's has inquired about a sign like that as well.
St. Pete's? Yeah.
They're looking at
A lot
Yeah.
of signs are unreasonable because they're poorly designed, static or
This
otherwise.
all had to do with just too much content,
No,
too much crammed
understood,
on a screen.
But there are many signs around that the contrast is bad, or this or that.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
The letters are too
yeah.
small or something, and it's a poor sign design. We can't regulate if a sign is designed poorly.
What we can do is regulate, attempt, if we can somehow, to regulate or point out those things that have the potential to have negative impacts on public safety. That we can do, and that's our responsibility, to at least be aware. And if we can't come up with anything, that's fine. But I don't think we just discount the fact that, well, we can't do it. I mean, you don't have street signs with lettering an inch high as you're driving by trying to read them. They're a certain size.
Doesn't that get back to the content? Like, we don't want to regulate content of sign? Because none of the other discussions about signage, we were talking about the size of the font or any of that.
No, that's what I was thinking.
I don't know if we want to get too granular.
That's not
on the
considered
eliminated.
content.
Sure it is.
No, it's, the size of the font is not content
No,
from a
that's true.
sign
But
regulation
I think
perspective.
what Eric is pointing out is we aren't talking
Urban
about
design,
regulating.
we don't say it has to be this big of a letter.
Right.
We aren't doing that with any of the other signage. Why would we do it with an electronic?
No, but we're taking into account how large a sign can be based upon, in some cases, the ability to be able to read it. Somebody even, on a little tiny sign, on a great big storefront, because nobody's going to be able to read it as they're. But what I am saying is, this is a factor that is regulated in many electronic message board ordinances.
Well, I'd be interested in seeing.
And it's usually done by the speed of the street traffic. The speed limit on the street.
If you had some examples, I'd be interested.
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of them out there. I can get some. It's not hard to find them. And I wouldn't want to get into horrible detail, but I think it's just something we want to be aware of. And if we can address it easily, then we do it. Especially as they proliferate.
Okay, I have a note to do some research to see if we can find some electronic message censure standards for font based on speed limit size or speed limit.
Yeah, they're out there. Some much more complex than others. Because I was actually curious about them when I thought, gee whiz, you can't read that sign. Okay, sorry.
Any other?
The speed limit down to 20 miles an hour. And I could read it.
We'll just lower the speed limit. good solution.
It's probably safer
Everybody else.
overall, yeah.
So what else do we have to think about before you bring back the next iteration?
Well, I had us listing, or the next meeting we would discuss banners and window signs. And now I've forgotten what that was about specifically.
If they're temporary or
Yeah,
not.
yeah.
Informal.
Oh, right.
How
Are
we
they
deal
temporary or
with that.
permanent?
Informal signs.
Great.
They have to get used to
Illumination
informal.
And then banner height, or sorry, banner size, well, just the regulations in general, but primarily size. Electronic message centers, I've got some notes on that. The foot candle and the content and the size of the font. And then the area regulations for the districts, based on uses.
And the foot candles.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
the
that
foot
too.
candle, right.
Yep.
I don't get foot candle at all, so.
So I think I have a good idea of where to go next. So I will probably, do you want to see a clean version or a red line version? Do you have a preference?
Well, sometimes clean is easier to read, but at least the red line lets you know for sure.
I could give you both.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's not that long. And then you're going to add the severability and the substitution clauses.
Oh, yes, I have a whole list of things to change. Those were just my topics of discussion for next time.
Okay. And of course, if anybody thinks of anything, they can always email you.
Absolutely.
Okay. Let's skip down to zip through some of these other things because it's getting late, folks. We'll do oh, look at that, the downtown. Oh, Lisa, I just noticed that. Not a very good proofreader. Downtown furniture design review standards.
Yes,
You don't need to go through a presentation,
okay.
I don't think, other than,
Packet, there is an Excel spreadsheet. I may have turned that into a PDF, I don't remember, but I know Rick had requested a list to choose from to set those design standards. So just to give you a little background, I know the city was originally going to put permanent furniture downtown that was in the design, and due to the budget, that was pulled out of it. So it would be up to the business owners, if they'd like to have patio seating out front, that they can certainly purchase, and do that, but the direction would be for you to set the standards of what that design standard should be. So in the package, just gave you different options to choose from, but it's not limited to that. If you wanted to take this further to WSB and have something more formal, we could do that. But I think my direction was to not have to go that route.
right. Well, and I think, people want it come summer, ideally, so the longer we don't come up with something, the harder it's going to be.
A couple of high-level kind of thoughts on the whole issue of downtown patio furniture. One of the issues is it seems like there's two categories here. One is what the city is responsible for in terms of types of furniture in the landscape in the downtown area, and that private companies are responsible for. And it seems like we probably simplify things and keep some consistency if we're real clear about what it is that the city's street furniture is going to be like or is like, and then allow most of the rest of it within bounds to be what the individual organizations do. I'm not sure I saw that in here or not, but maybe that's.
Do we have public furniture? Oh, the memorial benches.
And the bike racks.
Mhm. Well, and I thought the spreadsheet that she put together was good. You know,
Yeah.
the pros and cons of each of them. The thing that wasn't on there that I couldn't get a good sense of is, what are the price differentials here? Because that is gonna be an issue when we're asking the businesses or telling them, you gotta pay for this if you wanna do it. And last year, we kind of provided, not good stuff, but we at least made it possible for them to go that route.
One of the recommendations that I feel very strongly about with my interior design background is it should be commercial.
Yeah, yes,
Yeah, it must be.
I would agree.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
On the flip side to that, the American Legion furniture, which I've heard nothing but great things about, was ordered on Amazon, so I don't know that that was commercial.
Did you say the American Legion?
Yes, their new patio furniture.
Really?
Yes, it was, because I asked Archie, he sent me all the information, and in comparison to what I found online, or excuse me, locally, it was probably a third of the cost.
Wow.
So I don't know.
So do you have details on that stuff that they bought?
Yes.
Maybe providing that would be helpful,
Yeah, yeah, that gives people some idea.
because they did a really nice job on their outdoor seating area.
Yes.
I really like the brick, that's really nice.
And-
One
and-
other comment that I do have, I think what you were referring to, Rick, was in the parklets, and that's a completely
Yeah, that's different.
separate subject. That is in addition to what we're looking at for the downtown
Right.
furniture. So the parklets is not anything that we currently have in place. I know Lisa's a big proponent for that. And she wanted me to include that in this packet, but we are talking two separate things.
Right.
Okay, well, that clarifies things. But along that line, in terms of the parklets and stuff, one way to maybe be fairly successful at pursuing something like that, because, I've been to, cities where they do have lots of the street kind of seating, and it just is very, very pleasant kind of setting and stuff, is to pilot it.
Yeah.
Rather than say, here's what the regulations are, to choose a very limited but motivated merchant or two or three and say, we'd like to pilot something like this and see how it goes and try it out. And then from there, then it's a lot easier to kind of say, well, this worked, but this didn't, and get some regulations that would be applicable broader. And, and work it from that direction, rather than just saying, oh, clunk, here's what the regulations are ahead of time.
That's a really good idea.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so can you put together like the American Legion thing and then maybe some other ideas of, because I noticed a lot of our stuff is that commercial, like plastic or resin or whatever it's made of, but I have no idea what the costs for some reasonable size.
Well, I
Yeah,
mean,
the
I can tell
recycled.
you, that would be commercial grade, and that is gonna last for a really long
Yeah.
time. We don't know what,
Yeah.
and that's the biggest difference, so.
But if we're going to give options out there, then I think we need to include a price tag so that people have some idea so that even we know what we're talking about. Because there might be ways the city could help fund, even if it's not going to buy the stuff, whether it's the EDA or it's the, the business association, or maybe there are ways that.
Another thing that goes with the commercial seating, is the weight limits, or,
Yeah,
it's a consideration.
Sure.
To classify it as commercial.
right, right.
So,
Question?
And then you have the issue of storage too, so we always have to think
right.
about,
yeah.
And you stack them.
yeah,
that kind of a thing.
yeah, well, and where could this place keep them?
I have a question just because it happened to me last year in Stillwater. When it's on the public sidewalk, who is responsible liability-wise if they have furniture on the public sidewalk? Because I was out in Stillwater and they had an outdoor seating, they had umbrellas, and it was a windy day, and one of the umbrellas went up and flew over 3 tables and hit me in the back. So as far as being able to, if it's our liability and stuff like that, that everything is tethered down correctly and you're not with all the flying objects. I know we're talked about chairs and tables, but also if somebody wants to give shade for umbrellas.
We would certainly have to consult with the attorney, but typically it's the property owner of whatever the cause is, the root cause of.
And that may be where some guidance for those merchants comes in.
Right.
Is that, consider that, you need to be careful about the potential liability here too.
Well, I think it's interesting, it's something we want to encourage, but yet you have to be smart
Yeah.
and try to cover all the bases. So anything else she should bring back next month? I mean, I do think this is one of those, we need to move on this if people are going to be able to, although if they can use Amazon, maybe they can get stuff a lot quicker than,
They can get things quicker and cheaper.
yeah. Anything else? Well, again, if you think of anything maybe to include for next month,
Yeah.
Go
Another
ahead.
question, when you said parklets, those are the ones we're talking about, the empty spots that are on
Yeah.
downtown? Is that?
well, no, on the
They're just
streets.
kind of an extension, like a patio, into the street, yep.
Is that part of a business thing, or where the empty lots are you talking about?
It's also part of the business. It's kind of a
Okay.
relationship with the city, I guess you could say, but
Oh, okay. I was
also
just curious to
funded
see
by
if
the
there's any
business.
spots like where the lots where you could have, maybe the city have a couple things that.
Well, I think there are, but again, that's a different, that might
As
be
far as
part of
talking
that
about
discussion.
providing, you want to show the city and stuff, show
Right.
the business people have something set up in certain areas that we provide.
Yeah,
But it's more on the vacant lot open up for the type of things for people to do.
yeah.
Okay.
So I think the next three items under old business all relate to items that are on the agenda, on the short to-do list, so to speak. So because it's almost 9:30, I'd suggest we hold those over, and next month, one of the things we were going to do early in the year is put together that list of here's things that the Planning Commission has identified need to be worked on. And that's to provide the council with information about these are the things we need to spend time on. And those three are ones we know, and there were a few others.
Put them first on the agenda next month.
If we don't have a public hearing.
Yeah, if you don't have a
But there are some others that have been brought out that I look back at some minutes from when we started having these discussions. And one was community gardens. Another was the sign ordinance, which of course we're now working on. Another was short-term rentals. So those were things from prior minutes that were stuff we want to look at. The off-street parking really came to a head with the Richardson, where it was, and then the North High again, where it was like, do our requirements even make any sense? Not to mention the, Target lot that has been talked about that is far from full. It's just an expanse of asphalt in actually a prime location. So that's where the off-street parking comes from, and that's been on the radar for 3 or 4 years now. So I would just suggest that those get lumped into like the to-do creation. And that way, if you all think of anything, that you've thought, hey, you know what, this is another area that we really should pay attention to, that can be brought up now, or if you think of it, it can be brought up in the March meeting, when we kind of go through that and see, yeah, we want to look at it, maybe no, we don't. If that makes sense, just from a planning our workload. And letting the council know, these are the things that we think need attention.
I can do that, and I'll keep the list as things come up. We'll just keep adding them, and then we can prioritize
Right,
as time goes on.
yeah.
I'd just like to summarize the presentation that you're going to be looking for on the American Legion furniture. I'll give you the specs on that, and would you also like something similar that I know is commercial grade? Because that's what I don't know about the American.
Oh, okay. okay. Okay, yeah. Yeah, something comparable. Okay. Nap time. No, we're almost done. Yeah, I know, you hate when it goes like this. But when you have big items, what can you do? Okay, reports from staff.
The staff report that I had was the regular meeting versus the special meeting. You had inquired about that.
Yeah, how's it designated, right?
It is a regular meeting, and then in the most recent packet that went out, it does have the clarification of how many days notice. So it's 4 days before the meeting that the secretary, myself, would have to have the agenda items, and then the following day, it needs to be published, because we do need to give a 3-day posting notice.
Well, for regular meetings, you just have to publish those. That's why I asked if it was a special meeting. Special meetings require the 3-day notice. Regular scheduled meetings don't.
Okay.
That's why I asked, because I wasn't certain. What do we consider those?
And I got the direction from John, so,
Well, it's a joint group too, so that might, make a impact that where it is a special meeting for the planning
no, he
commission.
said
'Cause
it's a regular meeting because it's regularly scheduled.
then that's clear. It needs to just be posted.
Without any advance notice, just like,
Oh, no, I mean, you have to, just the way you would notice these meetings.
so that would be the 3-day, a minimum.
Yeah, if that's what you mean by 3 days, okay.
A minimum. So
Okay.
I usually try to send it out well in advance.
Oh, you're talking about the notification, yeah.
No, the agenda.
Yeah, I understand. I'm not talking about the agenda, I'm just talking about what they call the official posting from the open meeting law, which is different. That's why I was wondering.
Isn't posting the agenda to the internet and to the printed copy that's in the lobby?
The lobby copy of the schedule is what's required. The agenda doesn't have to be posted, just when the meeting is.
For the open meeting.
Yes, yes. That was all I was
The
getting at.
agenda is our rule, is what you're
It's our process to try to be as open as possible so people know.
Yes, because to be honest, the people that I've seen that look at that come in to find out what's on the agenda.
Yeah,
So-
I think you have a very good guideline there.
Okay.
That
Okay.
3-day posting is.
Okay, John, do you feel comfortable with that? Because you'll be giving me some ideas.
Yep.
And we'll communicate.
so you're talking 4 business days before,
No, we include the weekends on that.
do you really?
Well, we don't have to give really any notice.
No, I'm talking about when you would need notification of something to be on the agenda. 4 business days or 4, I think 4 business days is not,
So she wants it Monday morning.
that's, I'm just
That's
verifying.
the latest, right?
For an example, the EDA meeting that's next Tuesday, I had, with the notice that's proposed is in the packet here, I got the information by today, the deadline for that was today, I post tomorrow, and then the meeting's on Tuesday.
So
That
for,
would be-
so us, you would want it
So,
Monday
Yes,
the latest.
of the week of the meeting. And yeah, that's at the latest.
So a good guideline is.
but that would not allow us time to prepare everything.
Yeah,
if
that's a little too.
Well,
tight.
this would have to be something that doesn't require preparation on
It's
your
just-
part.
You're just adding an agenda line item.
Well, kind of like this one, the to-do list. That doesn't require any, documentation. It's just
Actually, John's implementing a change, and well, let me correct that. Any memorand, or any agenda item, he would like a memorandum, so you have that cover letter of knowing what's gonna be discussed. But
Okay,
with, that would be an internal thing. It wouldn't have to come from you, so, yeah, you're right, if there's,
well, let's put it this way. How about, if you're gonna have to do at least, type up some little memo type thing, then why don't we say the Friday before or the Thursday before?
Say at least the Friday before.
Yeah, I mean, it's just
Yeah.
for us.
Yeah.
We don't want to make extra work just to get some little discussion topic on the agenda where you don't have any additional information that you're going to have to provide. So,
as far as I know, it hasn't been an issue. I think we're okay with what's been happening, right? Okay.
well, it was just one of those, you never know if something might strike, and I just thought we might as well know what the process is. So, you're saying Friday before?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it is very
Well,
good.
actually, no, correct, yes.
It is very good when you post and you make statements about it being an updated or whatever. When you're, like, when the most recent packet came out and you revised it and you said that it was revised on the announcement, it's very helpful and to see the email that way, and I know which one I should go look at.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Very helpful.
One thing I can
I
tell you
know,
is
got
the
a list of
last- and this is actually a good conversation because it's been a top of conversation in our department as far as that goes. We do not want to implement a system, and this is coming from the city manager, I don't have his direct words, but we're gonna have a discussion on it next week. So if that was an email, so we don't wanna include every single change. We don't want to itemize every single change in a publication that goes out to the public. We like to keep that internal. It is helpful for some to know, what changes, but we don't really want to publicize that. So in public clerk, I guess this would be a system thing that we have to work out. In public, or civic clerk, we'd have to figure out something so that it's internal, or excuse me, that the public notices do not contain that information.
Okay, whatever. Something we don't have to worry about?
Yeah.
There you go.
Good.
Okay. Anything else from staff?
No.
Okay.
It just might be a while before that system is implemented, so I'll take direction from John as far as whether or not I will be notating what the changes are, and then when we get our system worked out, I'll update you.
Just don't surprise us with anything we need to, not giving us something we need to know.
Okay.
Okay. Reports from council liaison. Got anything, Lisa?
Yeah, we are still looking for folks to join this team, Planning Commission. We have about 3 applicants, but it's still open and they're looking to close it soon, but anyone is still welcome to apply and encouraged to do so. One thing that I will add is we had our council retreat a couple weeks back, and one of the main priorities was around sidewalks, and then just kind of discussing what would that look like in terms of a plan, and that might be coming to you all at some point too. And we also discussed a little bit about the connections to downtown, also via the gateway or other modes of transportation. For chairs, there is a meeting on March 24th for all of the chairs of every commission to get together with the council. The time is still to be decided, but it's planned for March 24th. And let's see, There's been discussion about Highway 120 and 36 a lot. There was like an open meeting, I think yesterday. And so there's a lot of conversation happening. There's a lot of buzz, so it can happen. A lot of people are very excited, so we'll see what happens there. Do you have any updates? Did you hear any updates from yesterday's meeting?
Oh, I need to go home.
Yeah, sorry. I'm sorry to put you on the spot. No, you don't have to answer that.
Let's
Did
see.
anybody else attend that 120 open house yesterday?
Yeah, it was virtual. I suspect that a couple of the council members probably
Yeah,
did.
Mary Furlong was there, I know. Mayor Furlong was there, and my wife and I were participating. Yeah, and Carrie was there.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
And it was, I mean, it seems like it was just a study that they're working on from 36 to 94. And so, I'm sorry, I'm getting in the middle of your report, so I didn't mean to do that.
That's okay.
But they kind of went through what are they addressing, what issues, and it's traffic, and it's safety, and it's bicycling and walking, and it's, I can't remember all the factors, but the safety was the biggest deal. There were some people expressing real concern. I mean, there was a comment about somebody who had gotten rear-ended an hour before the meeting on that highway, that kind of thing, so.
On 36?
On 120.
120, yeah.
So anyway, but 120 and 36 is probably the biggest issue.
Yeah.
So, but there are some pretty unsafe intersections and things like that. So it was a very good thing to participate in and kind of look for the next one and maybe recommend that people partake because it's helpful.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah, and as far as the arts meeting, I haven't heard anything since then. That was yesterday.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Well, there was one thing that I was going to ask the council member about, and that was the polar plunge.
Mm-hmm.
You enjoyed it?
I did. Sorry? Oh, yeah. I would do that weekly. Seriously.
Weekly.
I welcome you all next year. I think that would be fun. And then in terms of any other updates, let's see, the redevelopment master plan, I think a couple of you, John was there yesterday, and I'll just add that the timeline looks around June of when we would be completed with that, and then have some public feedback. And then basically, I think overall, we're looking at a broader, less specific redevelopment master plan, so something that has districts and then it's characterized. I think Brandy did a really great job, so we're moving along on that. Let's see, other than that, I don't think I have anything. Oh, wait, I do. In terms of funding, I've heard, some discussion about who's paying for these, the furniture, on the patio, things like that. And I think with that, there are grants if businesses are interested in that. I don't think from a city perspective that we're eligible to apply for that, but I think AARP, I'll send you the information. AARP has a grant, and they've funded parklets in the past, so that's up right now and available for a community if they want to apply.
I just want to add to that, it's not only the liability, but it adds additional maintenance for public works, and we would have to store it and everything else, so.
Okay. All right. Reports from commissioners.
I was at the economic development meeting, so we did have a great discussion, talked about more of the sidewalks and being able to get, some different paths and be able to understand where the needs are, took some names away, made it a little more, like you said, generic as far as different companies and what's available and different things. So it was a very, very successful meeting. So it went well. And we'll just keep on chugging. So we're trying that deadline, just like she mentioned, June, to be able to wrap that up.
Okay.
And when you were absent, does that count for my meeting or not? Running the meeting? No? Okay, just checking. Just thought I'd bring that out there for you.
Attendance at special meetings doesn't count.
No, I mean, when you left the room there for a few
Oh,
minutes.
oh, a
I'm talking about that one.
fraction. Okay, oh, you get 100th of a,
100th? Okay, all
100th
right.
of a meeting.
I won't have the final gavel next time then. I'm done.
Okay. Rick?
Nothing to report.
Okay.
My report was about the Highway 120 Century Ave thing, so.
Okay.
I think the only thing I have to report is it's not directly necessarily related to North St. Paul, but I'm part of a work group with the Hillcrest Urban Development, the Urban Development Committee, basically. There's multiple other committees that are doing other things, but there's about, I think, 8 or so people that are on the work group, so, you know, this is very high-level things that we're talking about right now, but if there's interest, I can report, even though, like I said, it's not North St. Paul necessarily, but we're, you know, it's close to us, so. Sure.
Brought up at our development, we want people to come from Hillcrest to North St.
Sure.
Paul. What can we do? So that is very important to
Yeah,
our
yeah.
group, is we wanted to discuss to be able to bring traffic our way instead
Absolutely.
of Mall Way or some other way.
Yeah, for sure. That's a really good point too. Yeah, because there's going to be a lot of new residents there. So that's a really good point. And I think it probably is one thing that's sort of lost because it is a St. Paul thing. You know, the idea of sort of weaving the neighboring communities back in, I think, is something that we've been talking about. So, yeah, good point.
They're going to want to keep their people there. Eric?
I got nothing, I pass.
Excellent. Well, I'm going to pass too, because otherwise you're all going to be dropping off. So I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Eric, second by Rick. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, none? All righty, we're adjourned at 9:47.
Did joke about giving John the gavel, adjourning and leaving before you came back, just to see what would happen.
That would have been,
If it was April Fool's Day, maybe.
oh, that'd be
That
perfect,
would be
wouldn't it?
funny then. Yeah. Or just, you know, real fast.
Yeah,
Leave
yeah.
the room.
Well, you know there'd be some strength.